Cue the music. Three, two, one. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another Late Night Comics with your two Wahoos, Ash and RDV. RDV, how you doing? Good to see you.
I am doing great, sir. How are you?
Oh, that's great. Glad to hear. Here to talk some comics. I love doing this every week. It's fun to hang around with people and enjoy your favorite hobby. So, has this been a good week for comics for you?
Last week was pretty good. Some of the issues, and then this week is gonna be a little different as far as issues. Though there's some that I like, and then there's some are like, eh. I've mainly been reading a lot of back issues, a lot of comic books.
Since
So that's
last
pretty much.
Monday, has it been good? Have you?
Well, I haven't had any complaints about the books I've read. Um, I usually try to pick up books that I know that it's in my wheelhouse, one I like. If I do go out of my wheelhouse, it's usually because something that you recommended or Skip or even uh Eric has mentioned. So I just been trying to avoid bad books if I can. But
Sure.
sometimes we do bad books. I like I said, I don't know anybody goes out of their way. It's like, oh, I read this book and it sucks. The only way I can think is if you're actually reading something you haven't been reading in a while, you pick up the issue, you're like, oh, I'm gonna read this again, and then you find, oh, this is shit.
Yeah,
Because
unless you have a
yeah,
YouTube channel devoted to trashing on books, that's the only reason you should be picking up bad books. I don't understand. I mean, when I see people like in the chat or whatever, they're like, "Oh, I'm getting this book and it's still horrible." I'm just like, "Dude, did you ever think of quitting?"
like, I was looking at the Gail Simone, Red Sonja run that went from 2013 2015. Had some really decent covers, but I'm sure the story was horrible because that's when she changed the whole lore about Red Sonja. It took away her chastity vow and basically said, like, "You're free to be a whore." Yeah.
Yeah, that's
But
great.
no, but we had awesome Jenny Frizen covers.
Well, that's kind of
So,
cool. Hey,
like, that's to
what
see.
I tell people when your comics go bad and you can't stop buying them, Just just buy them and stick them in a bag and board and don't read them. And you can just imagine how good they are.
Well,
I
that's
started
what I
doing that with
that
sorry, hold on one sec. I started doing that with Batman when the Tom King run, because I just got to the point where I couldn't read it anymore, but I loved Batman and I had been collecting it, and so I was like, "I'll just keep writing this out until a new writer gets on?" I just stopped reading them.
yeah. I wasn't sure because, with the Gail Simone run, because the last one before that went for 80 issues.
Yeah, that could be
So
rough, when you're
I was,
gonna
I was, I was, I was like, I'm like, oh no, 80 issues of Gail Simone. I'm like, and just, but I'm like, you're right though. You just buy it for the covers. The covers were good back then for Red Sonja. They actually understood that they actually have to sell cheesecake in order for people to buy it
And that was the one thing
because
that the Tom King Batman had for me is like at least the covers and the interior art was generally pretty great. But I just kept buying it, and then fortunately I didn't jump onto that Batman series until 45, so I didn't have to write it out from issue 1 through 85. That was a
I
rough
can't
ride for a lot
recall.
of people.
Even before Capullo, I can't remember the last time Batman had bad interior art or even bad cover art.
Yeah, he
I'd
generally
say it probably
doesn't. He's kinda like their
no.
A-team
Like,
book, you
it's
know?
like it's like they have to have good art in it. They know the story shit, but they want you to have good art at least. It's like what?
It's their big book. This is the way X-Men
I
used to be back when I was collecting, like, they always put the best artist on there because it was their m massive number 1. They didn't wanna mess with the golden goose. So yeah, Batman kinda gets that treatment for DC today.
I'm just glad that Bendis got Superman instead of Batman. I think it would have been much worse if he would have got Batman.
At least but Superman would have been good.
It would have been it'd be weird if Superman had been the good, like, Tinian had been on writing Superman, and Superman was great and stuff. And then, Jordan probably never would have been aged up, you know? Or sorry,
Jordan,
not
you
Jordan,
mean
but John,
someone's
damn
getting their
CW.
Superman getting their Superman crossed. Um,
It's late. I'm tired.
yeah, I don't know, man. You kinda put a question in my head. I kind of almost think it would have been better. In the long term, I think it would have been better if you had Batman because I think Batman is more easily fixed. Superman.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you come back from like aging up John Kent, having Clark Kent reveal his identity, turning him into like the shittiest parent in the world? Like, how do you come back from that?
It's called Dark Crisis, and you just kill everybody off. Another
I
crisis
guess
wave.
so, but kind of
Start over.
one of the interesting things about Superman is this is pre-Flashpoint, post-Crisis Superman that exists in the New 52 universe. And Batman, you can sort of almost like crisis him out and put him back in because he's not really the post-Crisis Batman, right? So I don't know, like
Yeah.
it like ruins this Superman who survived since the Crisis on Infinite Earths. he's 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 lasted in DC this long, and it took Bendis to mess it up.
Like I
Wow.
said, it'd be crazy because I'm a post crisis DC Superman fan. If like they would put as much effort into putting a making as good as they do with the Flash, wow, DC, I'd be buying two DC titles, constantly.
Yeah.
The Flash is on its third writer, and it's still good. We're not getting any of this crap really they're putting into with Superman. There's none of the gay stuff. Well, I don't. I mean, that's cool if you want to do that, but like, there's a way how you do it, and there's not. The way they're doing it is like, oh, we're just gonna make characters gay, and if you don't like it, you're a Nazi. Like, they just don't understand how to.
It's
They literally got straight white guys writing gay characters. That's the thing that weirds me out. You know, and then you get
sorry
yeah,
while I
and
pour a
this.
drink.
Go ahead, pour me. I'll take 2 shots.
2 shots of Pepsi on the rocks.
I'll just have the rocks, please.
Oh, okay. Um,
I
y
can't
you know
afford the
what I gotta
shots.
say though? You make a super valid point. Um, because I used to buy tons of DC. I used to be DC was my jam, and I'm an old school Marvel guy. Like, I got Rebirth completely converted me into a DC fan, and so it was really sad to let go. And I don't relish letting go. I don't like it. I miss that time. Um, but Flash has been. You're right. It's been pretty much non-interrupted good this whole time. But Batman is kind of back to firing on all cylinders. The main Batman title and the main Detective Comics seem to be in really good hands.
Yeah, at the time in 2000 was it 2016's Rebirth? Yeah, I wasn't reading comics. I didn't come until 2019, so I started in 2019 reading 80 issues of Flash. It was probably the most fun I had binge reading since Amazing Spider-Man. You know, and like it just I was never a DC guy. Heck, I wasn't even a Flash person. I
Yeah,
watched
me
the show on
neither.
CW. I watched the CW show first. I was like, "What is this crap?" And then I went back and watched the 1991 series that people are shitting on out with John Wesley Shipp, and I was like, why don't we have this? And I was like, then I started reading the comic books. I was like, holy crap, you know. I never really read anything. I at this point I read no Flash books before this. I think I may well, let me take it back. I read a few by Mark Wade back in the day. A few here and there. I never had a complete run, so reading this Joshua Williamson, reading his Barry, that was the first. This was my first Barry issues. I was like, this really feels like Wally in a sense, the way he's acting, everything. I didn't care for Wallace because it just I liked Wally.
No
That
one
was my
cares for
guy.
Wallace.
Yeah, yeah. Wallace was just there is for a virtue signal, but what Joshua Williamson did with the character, and then Jeremy Adams too, I think they actually fully. It's like Shiri, or not Shiri, but what's her name? Riri Williams. When she first was written and brought in there, she was written horribly. But then later on, someone else got a hold of her and wrote her better. And that's I feel how Wallace was. Wallace was originally written like shit. He's just for a crappy PR thing. But they actually took the time. They actually flesh him out, make him a better character. You know, is it dumb to have two Wallies? Yeah, it is. It's as dumb as having two Spider-Mans. But at least this one's Kid Flash, and then and they made Wally Flash. But I mean, right now Marvel has two Spider-Mans. Like, why isn't one of them just like Kid Spider-Man or
Don't
Kid
they have don't they
Spider-Boy?
have 3 Spider-Mans? Or is Ben? I
Uh,
can't ever keep track of Ben Riley. He keeps coming and
Ben.
going.
Well, no, the way they do with Ben Riley is that Ben Riley and Peter would take turns back in the day. Like Peter was stopped, and then we got Scarlet Spider.
Yeah,
He
but
took over.
I thought in the recent Spider-Man
In
storyline,
in
it was
in,
actually
in,
Ben
in the
Riley.
in the recent, yes. Well, Peter was actually he had got hurt. He's radiation poisoning from his own blood.
Jesus.
So he was in the hospital the whole time while Ben was being Spider-Man for this corporation, and then Peter got back, and then finally he battled against Ben with no memories, so he went kind of evil, and now he's like Schism, or I forget what he's called. It's some stupid name.
I just
It's
got a
probably
really
like,
great idea.
yeah, just kill people
What
off.
if they made Miles Morales gender binary, and then, or not, sorry, non-binary, that's the term, non-binary, and then he changed his pronouns so he could be Spider them. That's kind of a joke. Didn't I kind of need a laugh track.
Can
Spider
we get a pity laugh in the chat, please?
Spider them.
Uh,
Well, this is a good time to say hello to the chat. Tahilum is first tonight. He says, "Good to see you." Good to see you too, Tahilum. Thanks for being first. Shout
oh
out to
crap,
you
where's he hiding at? I can't see him.
in the chat.
Yes.
He's hiding in the chat. He's got a channel as well, so go look out Tahilum. I don't know off the top of my head what the thing is, but
I always forget that he has a
Tahilum,
channel. I know it.
Tahilum, you can shout out your channel, how to find it.
It's
Um,
Get
also,
his
you
name.
can you click on his name and do it? I don't know how
I don't know. We used to
you
be able to
used to
click on
be able
someone's
to.
name.
Yeah, I don't think you can anymore.
Not
HR Goes
anymore, but
Vocal is in the chat. We got Zach Richmond and Marania. Good to see you, Marania. Haven't seen Marania around here in a while, so it's good to kind of see a familiar face.
she came in and said hi, and she's gone again.
She's gone.
It's like,
Drive by Marania. And then there's Lord. Hello, Lord. Such a clever name that people call you Lord. Um, we should have better names. Yours is just initials. I don't even know what to call you sometimes.
um, I
RDV
don't
doesn't
know.
really flow off the tongue very easily.
You can just call me V.
I can call you V.
Yeah.
Do you have like a Guy Fawkes mask?
I will not confirm or deny it.
Oh man. So hey, those are the people I'm seeing in chat, and if you're lurking in the background, hello to you as well. Please feel free to throw suggestions out there of things you want to talk about, or things you have, if you have questions, especially when we're talking about the books. We love to hear feedback and opinions as well. This isn't just about us telling you what to think. This is a conversation. So hopefully you guys want to be involved. Um, let's see. Tahilum says, we're forgetting about Superboy Prime, who has also caused a DC Crisis 2. I'm not familiar enough with DC to know about that. There's too many Superboys. I got to tell you that for one thing, in my opinion.
So it took all the speedsters to try to hold him down. I think this was during the time when Mark Wade was writing the Flash. I remember that Wally, he had twins with his twins kids were rapidly aging at this time too. But that was back in the 90s. I think actually not even 2000s, not sure. But anyway,
Ron,
I like what he
go ahead.
I was gonna say I like what he says about Wally calling Wallace Ace. They've been doing that. They ain't calling him Wallace anymore. He calls him Ace. When they're out on the field, like his doesn't call him Kid Flash. He says, "Go Ace." And and the whole thing is like his he originally calls him Ace because the kid's super overconfident. And then he always ends up failing. So it's kind of a
Yeah,
dig.
that's a cool thing. I really wish these characters would get their sort of their own identities. I know I feel like I beat a dead horse with this, but it's one of my biggest pet peeves in comics are characters assuming the identities of other existing characters. It's one thing if the
Yeah.
character's long gone, and it's like, oh,
Yep.
and I hate the term, but I'm gonna pick up the mantle. Sometimes
Hmm.
there's room for that, right? Sometimes like, oh, Batman's out of commission, so Nightwing comes in and wears the cape and cowl for a while. I can get that when Rhodey picked up the Iron Man suit. there are times where it can work, but when the character's running around alongside you, and also especially when their name's clearly not a title or a mantle like Thor or Wolverine, and
Well,
you just
yeah, there's
call
a
yourself that, you're just an a-hole. You're just
there's a reason why he's called Robin, not called Bat Boy. It's not Batman and Bat Boy. Like, you gotta give him a different name, otherwise it just sounds stupid. I mean, I would said call him Kid Arachnid for Miles Morales, because he's only 14 or 15 years old. He's not like no in his 20s, and the fact that Spider-Man is still around, you
principle, I
know.
agree with you. I'm not sure I'm sold on that as a particular
I
name, but in
You know what
principle,
though?
yeah.
It it's not the best name, but it's better than you have. I'd rather have him have a different name. That's all I'm gonna say. And and I actually where I got that name is from at Disney XC. That was the 2017 Spider-Man cartoon. He actually where Spider-Man actually called Miles. He said, you can't be Spider-Man. So he's like, he kept saying like, I'm gonna call you Kid Interacted, and Miles hated it. That was a running joke in that show.
Yeah.
He's like, he said, you're not using my name, I'll sue.
Let me get through a couple of these comments. Marani says, I'm hoping that Money Guy at Discovery nukes 9/10 of the current DC comic book lineup and limits the Batman books to at most 3. Batman, Detective Comics, and White Knight. No complaints here. I would be happy with that. Tehillim says Superman Rebirth #1. Sorry, Superman Rebirth is one of the best runs. Amen to that. It's one of my favorite runs as well. My favorite Superman run. Not that I'm a hugely versed in Superman, but um, let's see. Tehillim Bell says I'm not much of a big Flash either, but I do remember the '80s '90s Flash series that they did live action. That was interesting. Yeah, me too. I was absolutely Mr. Non DC guy, and I remember that show coming on TV, and it was a huge thing. Like even I was like, oh my god, and I was watching it just because comic book TV shows they weren't a thing really back then. So you took whatever you could get. And I remember like they made the suit look really cool for its time, but it wasn't enough to make me pick up the books. Um,
Like Arrow, when Arrow came on, they're talking about that. So the preview, I was like, "Oh my gosh, yes, thank you." He finally is serious. He's not this stupid, like Smallville version they had running around. Hartley. I was just like, "Oh, that was so horror cringe." The bright colored suit and just, I was just like, "Oh." And then then I was like, "What the hell is this?" He's like Batman. He's the Arrow. I was like, "Why is he killing people?" You failed this. So I was like, "No," but I'm like, you know what? I'll go with it for a while.
right.
The
Um,
show didn't get bad until he revealed who he was to Felicity. That's
right.
when the show went downhill.
I was totally cool with the Green Arrow show because you could tell it was like, we can't get Batman. We want to do Batman, but we can't. So we'll just take this character and kind of make him pseudo Batman. And I was like, all right, whatever. I'm okay
When you
with
could
that
tell,
because it's not really interfering with the comics. So kind of do
no,
what
at
you're
all.
gonna do. But
Although when they, I think Rebirth version, they for Rebirth for Green Arrow, he was based off of the actual show, the costume,
mhm,
and the whole Felicity. They brought Felicity in.
right, I think it was funny that they called the show the Arrow too, because you just know it was like
Yeah,
Green Arrow does sound. That was one of my biggest problems as a kid. That was my barrier to DC. Is that a lot of the characters just seemed dumb. Not that they were, but they just had silly names. Like I was like, DC is really big on like putting color and then something like Green Arrow, Blue Beetle, Red
like
Tornado. Like
they
it's
had to like change the name in the show. How dumb it was because he was originally called the Hood. He wasn't even called the Green Arrow in the show until like the fourth season. They're like, yeah, Oliver Queen isn't the Hood. Like the Hood's somebody else. And like Oliver Queen's like, I'm going around and call myself I'm Green Arrow.
well, yeah,
I was
they found a way to incorporate the Green Arrow into it, but you could tell when they did the show they didn't want to call the show Green Arrow because they knew that would probably be a barrier. Right? That's what kept me from getting into a lot of DC comics, and it just kind of shows, and that's an issue where DC kind of, I don't want to say they
what?
fail because it's no one's fault that 80 years ago someone created a character that worked
It's
back then and doesn't
it
today.
it is true though because like, Green Arrow, Blue Beetle, Black
Red
Lightning.
Tornado, Black Lightning. Yeah, there's quite a few actually. But speaking of colors and names, HR Goes Vocal has a couple of good comments I like. He says, "I honestly want Joker to get rid of Jace Fox. That would be badass. Another
Well,
just do
no,
it Death in the Family too. Please."
before before they do that, the new Batman Black and White is gonna be Bruce teaming up with Jace.
Oh, jeez. Ba-dum-bum. He also says Tim Drake is Red Robin, and I hate Bendis. That's his words, not mine,
Good.
but I kind of tend to agree with him. I don't hate Bendis. I just hate what he does.
Yep.
But Red Robin is a cool name because it both it both identifies kind of who you are, but also separates you. You go, that guy was Robin, I'm Red Robin, and it's simple enough to just basically say I'm different. I'm not trying to be that person. And I think with Miles Morales, I don't know if Black Spider or something or Black Spider-Man would be too on the nose, but something as simple as that,
They can't
um,
use Black Spider, that's a DC character.
it figures. But something as simple as that, hypothetically, I think would be enough just to say, look, I'm not going to call myself you. I'm so sick of these characters running around, and it's even worse when the original character validates the new one. Like, oh, when I was reading in the X-Men, Wolverine would be like, her name is Wolverine. She's the best at what she does. And I'm just like, oh my God, that's so cringe. Like, Wolverine would
Yeah,
never
yeah.
say this.
I was at the comic book shop and they had the statue of Wolverine. I was like, "Yes, finally, it's Laura Kinney." It's like, I was like, I should buy this and just put on behind when I'm on my camera, little note card says the real Wolverine. It's to trigger people. No,
Well, we got something
I
new that we're doing this week, and we're going to continue on, and hopefully
yeah,
get some of you guys involved. What's up?
yep. I was gonna say something new. We're gonna talk about the comic book first, then go in the weeds.
Oh,
Let's get in.
so I came up with an idea. RDV's rolling with it, and I'd like to get you guys involved too. Come to the Discord channel for more participation. But this idea that we came up with is just to kind of add on to the reading club portion to read more comics. Is every week RDV and I are going to pick a book that we want the other person to read. It's a book that that person is not normally reading on their own. It can be a new current issue, or it can be back issues. And it's just basically to help each other because we have different tastes. Some of our tastes are similar, but we also have way different tastes. And it's just to kind of help each other be exposed to books that we may not just read on our own. And sometimes it's a great way to discover new titles. A lot of the books I read today are because of that. I honestly, most of the books I read today are because someone else was like, try this out. And I was like, all right. Um, so this week, um, we started that. And RDV, what book did you pick for me?
A Town Called Terror by Steve Niles, the writer and creator of 30 Days a Night.
Town Called Terror. And here it is. Just bring it up on the screen for people to see. Um, this Now, why did you suggest this book to me?
It's the book I had just learned about last week, and I figured it'd be this up your alley because I remember you did the live stream. You actually read the first 3 issues of the original story, 30 Days a Night.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured it'd just be something up your alley because I remember you saying you'd wanted to maybe read the rest of it because there were some other volumes, but you never got around to it because there's so much other stuff you're doing. So, just because the artwork too, I know you like looking at artwork. You're talking about how you like looking at books that have less dialogue. And sometimes it's more they rely on the art to that's telling the story.
Gotcha.
I felt this would be a little bit up your alley. So,
All right. Well, I read it, and now in our agreement on this week, we're just to read 2 issues.
yep.
So RDV asked me to read 2 issues. It's currently on issue 5, and I read all 5 issues. Um,
See, it must have been that good.
it was pretty good. I have to admit, the book it did start off a little
Yeah,
a little a little rough,
second issue
and
pulled me in.
my opinion on it is that it does feel a little decompressed, but once I got to issue 4, it really grabbed me. And then issue 5 is my favorite issue of the bunch, and I was like, "Oh, I can't read issue 6 yet." So, that was rough. I really liked issue 6. And this is not what I thought it was gonna be at all. I I really thought this was gonna be more like 30 Days a Night. Um, I thought it was gonna be more horrific, and it's really I didn't think that
Same.
this book to me kind of felt like a Vertigo book.
Yeah, it wasn't really scary or grotesque as you thought it would be, as I was gonna be when I got into it. Like I said,
Yeah, and the main character feels like a Vertigo character, like almost not quite like a Hellblazer, but in that same line of
he's pretty much an asshole, but but he also he just wants to go back to his wife and said, yet he's stuck doing this, and
right, and he's got that supernatural background,
he's got that chip on his shoulder too. So
a
I
little
like
bit
it.
chip on his shoulder. But in this world, there's kind of like a world within a world, and um, there's a lot of world building in this. Very interesting. The whole premise of called Terror is essentially like there's
That was right. Wait,
this town. What's that?
I was gonna say the title actually tells you what you.
Well, it kind of does. I mean, it tells you that there's a town called Terror, but it's it's not like I was expecting. I was thinking it was going to be kind of like here's a town and like evil descends upon it, and it's like a horror story like 30 Days a Night was. Um, this was really about like the story takes you to this town, and the town is essentially a refuge, I guess, for monsters, like your classic monsters, your Frankenstein monsters, your werewolves, your um,
Yep.
any of the things you can think of, witches, vampires, or whatever.
Vampires. Yep.
Um, they all kind of
Halloween
like
time.
live in this town, and this town is shielded from knowledge of existence. It's invisible, like you can't find it through normal means because of
In
magic and whatever.
did
And the
you
main
ever
character is kind of from it.
did you ever read Fables?
No.
Billingham? And where there's a I was reading up because I was reading about Big Wolf and how they got to like to where we are in the Wolf Among Us game. They originally lived in a town, that was basically that was they had glamour spells on. They make them look like normal. But where they originally came from, the Fable world, it was through a portal created by these three witches. And I and they and you if you learn about the berry that's going on in town here, it's created by witches too as well. In order to because the original guy, in order to escape, the guy who's been held by against the will there. The first time he got through there, he made a deal with the witches, if I remember correctly. But
Hmm.
so
Okay.
anyway, so that
I'm gonna
explains
get to
that's why
Fables one day, but this
yeah,
tonight we're talking about is Town Called Terror,
yeah.
and I really liked that it wasn't what I was expecting. I was kind of like, okay, I kind of just went in with my own pre expectations, and was expecting, okay, it's going to be a town where evil descends upon it, and they have to survive, and blah blah blah, and which is could be fine. 3 Days a Night worked really well. But I really kind of like that this was more of I don't know, not of an adventure story, but it was I don't know. It really is not a horror story.
No, no.
It's almost kind of like a revenge story, maybe, or I don't know. There's like a conflict. I don't want to say too much for spoiling to people, but it is very cool. It's very dark. If you like Vertigo style books, which by the way, Fable's a Vertigo book, Hellblazer, Preacher, those type of books that feature the dark supernatural and characters that live in this world, and it has got world building. Um, there's some surprises. This character is kind of just dragged into or back into this world, and he's got to deal with certain things. And the last issue, the issue 5, not the last issue, but the last issue I read was my favorite because that's where all the ante gets upped, right?
Climax
Like,
is yeah,
yeah, like you're
it's
just like,
getting it.
okay, this character's going back, he's dealing with his family and his past, and blah 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 blah. but then the other parts of his life kind of get thrown into it as well. And I'm trying to really restrain from saying too much because
Yes.
I would want people to read it and have that same experience. But I really just liked how it was like the first 4 issues, you're like, "Okay, okay, this is going on. Okay, this is interesting." And then it's like issue 5, you're like, "Oh, shit. Oh, damn." And that's really cool writing because it just keeps building it up. It's like, like I said, upping the ante. The pot's getting bigger and bigger, and the stakes are higher and higher. So, yeah, I think
What do
if
you think about?
anyone is interested, if you read 30 Days of Night, and you enjoyed it, if you like Vertigo kind of style gothic books, that have cool world building and supernatural stuff, I think this is something other people should check out too. I very much enjoyed it.
What do you think about the art?
Uh, it worked for this book. But I gotta say, Kudransky is not my favorite artist. There are certain things about him that don't appeal to me. Um, but it really worked for this book, and I really liked how he colored uh the book. I'm pretty sure he was the colorist, or did someone else color? Yeah, he colored it. I knew it. It had to be the case. There's no way another party colorist would have colored it this way. This is very much coloring that came from the mind of the artist himself. It's one of those styles, and this is beautiful on digital. It's one of those books I read at night, so in the dark. And
Yeah.
by the way, I played the Stranger Things soundtrack while I was reading this, and it really worked. Really worked great.
What?
Um,
Wait, Master Puppets?
no, I did the score, the score. Really worked great for this book, and in the dark, the way the digital coloring is, I wish I had pages to show, uh, but I don't. The way he uses the red lighting, like, really pops off the page. So, I encourage people, like I said, if this is something that at all sounds like it might be up your alley in any way, this is a book, worth checking out. It's a good recommendation, RDB.
Thank you. I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, me too. I was really not wanting to get on here and just be like, "Oh my god, what the hell did you recommend? This was
And that
shit."
and that book is now that book is the exception that when kind of you want to binge because if
Yes.
I or if I would have read that first issue and just had to wait a month, I probably wouldn't have gone back to it. I read the second issue and I was like wow, this is getting the art just really just drew me in once he got into town, and you meet these other people in there. It's just like I want to know more about this little town. This is like I want that now. And after I got to issue 5, I was like, dude, there's only one more issue. Make this into a movie, man. Like literally, that's what I want. But don't put it on Netflix.
Netflix does some good movies.
Yeah, but Netflix will be like they'll diverse it up. They have a
Maybe.
history of that.
Yeah. I don't know. I think they're learning some lessons so the hard way. But, yeah, this I
Right.
100% agree with that statement. I think yeah, I think if I had just read the first issue, I would have not felt a strong pull to get to issue 2. But when I read it in a binge, this book feels like it's written for the trade. Like,
It is.
it absolutely feels like, and that can be a good thing when you have all the issues. If you just
Yes.
read the trade, it can be a bad thing if it's one issue at a time and you're like, oh, this is really decompressed. And it does feel decompressed for those first like 3 or 4 issues.
Like the
Um,
story, like when I read the first issue, you're reading like, oh, what's this? Okay, this is going on, and then like then you get the second issue, like, whoa, the story changed on me.
yeah,
It's
it
not
totally does.
it's it fakes you out. It was just kind of cool
Yeah,
because
I
like
100% agree. I like that about this book is it never went where I was expecting it to, and that's a good thing as well. And I don't know what's going to happen. I'm on the I think issue
no,
6 is is it only 6 issues? How many issues is this?
yeah, I think it's gonna be issue 6 is the last one.
So,
Comes out September, so I hope. I mean, I would love to have it more, but man, where would you go from that?
I'm
Like,
wondering what they're going to do with one more issue. Like I feel like there's
yeah,
a lot more story to go. So,
and I know.
the
Well,
next issue is
I'm
going to
not.
be a lot of stuff happening.
I'm not sure if the 6 is the last issue, but knowing these type of books, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I cuz with what happened at the end of issue 5, and I'll just say it in code so I don't spoil, but you'll know, like, when the sheriff shows up and that
Yes.
scene where you're just like, "Oh, what's gonna happen now?" You've got one more issue to resolve that? Like, really? That's like the beginning of a whole series. Uh,
All right.
so, um, we'll see. We shall see. So, if anyone else has read this, put your thoughts in the chat. I'd be curious to know if you agree with RDV and myself, if this is a good book, or if we're both off our rockers and it's total garbage. Who knows? Different strokes for different folks. Um,
Like
so
I
what
said,
was
this wasn't a book I normally would have picked it up, but I saw it was coming out. The issue I saw issue 5, and I flipped it open, looked at the interior art, and I was like, dude, I went back and I picked up the other. The art was what I took a chance based on the art alone. And then reading the first issue and going through, man. Um, so the book you recommended for me was a slightly different book. Did
slightly
have some
different?
gore in it,
Just a
you
little
know.
different.
Started out with, with some chunks of meat in the shoe.
Oh yeah, there was
Uh,
some gore. There
yeah,
was some gore. I
yeah.
forgot.
uh, there was a Bill Sienkiewicz cover. Did not know that.
Oh, I didn't know that either.
Cover artist says Matteo Buffagini, colored by David Creel and Bill Sienkiewicz or Sienkiewicz. You've heard it both ways.
Sienkiewicz.
Everybody likes it their own way. I don't know. So Prodigy, the Icarus Society. You recommend this book to me. I went in through it. I'm like, I started flipping through it. I was like, this is kind of cool. And then it's just now for those who are wondering, it is written by Mark Millar. So what take it with a grain of salt, whether you like him or you don't like him. Um, Mark Millar is all over there when it comes to what he writes. At least I've seen.
He does. He has a lot
Uh,
of different styles, and I think some people
yeah,
are can tend to read a few of his works and then assume that all of his work is like that, and so he gets like a reputation. And I can understand that, but he does have different styles to how he approaches stories. So they're not, sometimes they're very dark and like nihilistic, or sometimes they're just like lewd and crude. But then other times he can write some hopeful, fun stuff as well. So I would say don't judge him. Don't think all of his stuff are pigeonholed into the same thing. Go ahead.
yeah. Reading this story, I kind of feel like the main character, Edison Crane, was like a narcissist Reed Richards, in a sense. Like this guy is supposed to be the smartest man on the world. He's like he's a panel in here where he's sitting watching TV and he calls up unsolved mysteries and he tells them where the body's hidden because they can't figure. He's like, so it's the guy almost comes off so arrogant and smug where I just hate his character throughout the book. I just couldn't. I was like, really, this guy needs attitude adjustment. You know, I read the 2 issues, man. This isn't my normal cup of tea. And I agree. I admit I've never really read a lot of Mark Millar stuff or Millar. Um, but yeah, it does have that whole James Bond as far as Spectre. They're called the Icarus Society. They don't care about money. All they care about is one up each other because they're that bored. They're that smart. Like, and basically, this guy, this doctor or scientist, basically wants him to steal something for him. As far as let's just say there's these was it 10 or 18? I think it was 18 different like these different tablets or whatever or golden artifacts. Wants you to he's got half of them. Another guy's got from the other society, the member has them, but he wants him basically to go steal them from the guy. That's where issue 2 basically ends off of. But going through this, the art's pretty good. But I just hate the main character to going through this. He just came off so smug. And I don't know if Mark's gonna change the guy's personality towards this, But
He is a little bit, well, he is a
yeah,
bit arrogant, but
yeah,
when you see what this character is capable of, he's literally the smartest guy in the world, but he's not smartest like
yeah,
in our way. He's smartest guy in the world in like comic book way. He
yeah.
he he can do things that are just beyond normal human even comprehension. He's just that far advanced, and
The guy he
it
raises
makes sense
cheetah.
if you were that far beyond regular
Yeah,
humans. It's very easy to have
bored. Yeah,
that
yeah.
feeling of like I'm
Mhm.
just this all comes very easy to me. Like what you guys like. So I would what I see as like arrogance. It's almost to me it doesn't bother me because it's almost deserved. Like he really is that good.
It's just
Um,
he almost comes off as Lex Luthor, like a villain in that sense, where he's smarter than everybody else. And then basically, I was like, whoa, when like the very beginning, it's like when they need someone, they're like, and then like they call the FBI, and then they call CIA, and then the president calls me because I'm the top, I'm the last line of defense, basically that they whenever they need something done.
oh yeah,
Like
so
this
he's
guy,
the
yeah,
smartest guy in the world. Yeah,
yeah.
but that's written in third person. It's not him saying
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
There's a narrator.
No. There's narrators. Yeah.
So I agree with you.
This
He
guy.
is arrogant, but he doesn't look down
Uh,
on people. He doesn't like Luther
no,
like
no.
thinks people are pissants. He doesn't have
But
that kind
this
of attitude.
but at this point though, I wouldn't be surprised if he does later on. Who knows? Like I said, it's got the whole secret organization Illuminati thing, you know, going with the Icarus Society, and they basically are tired of him, you know, running around, doing his own stuff. But yeah, I mean, the art, like I said, the art's good in here. This, the people, their reactions. Like he basically like you find out like he basically gets kidnapped, and you find out it's the third time that he's like paid people to kidnap him and beat him up, just so he can like escape from 'em each time, and he's testing his limits.
Oh yeah,
I'm
he's
like,
always constantly keeping
I'm,
himself.
I'm like, are you Bruce Wayne? It's like,
Well, he kind of is like this Edison Crane character is like Batman, Reed Richards, and
yeah.
all of this thrown into one. You know,
Now,
he is a very
yeah,
almost like well, it's a comic book. He's an unbelievable
yeah.
character. I think the point of this book is to make something just ludicrous and then put it in a book and explore it. When I did my video on it, I called it like I was almost my hypothesis was that this is a Mary Sue that works. That Mark Miller was like everyone can't Mary Sue's are bad characters. I'm going to make one and make a story that works with because he's very much can
Well,
do
true,
almost
yeah.
anything.
Yeah, you see it. Yeah, see towards the end. Yeah, he thinks he's all this, and then he ends up being played by a girl.
What I like about this book myself because I had read the first series as well was that the Icarus Society is introduced and in the first comic Edison Crane has no peers. He's by far and away there's no one comes close to him. The things that he can do. And in this book, you're introduced to a whole secret society of people that are smarter than him. And you're like, whoa. And so he's kind of like met his match. And so
I
now I
guess
find it
is this like the third series in this
second series.
second series? Okay, all right.
And apparently it's being developed into a film. So we'll see where that goes. So this is not a book. I agree with you. This is not a book you're going to want to read because Edison Grain is such an endearing character that you're going to fall in love with. I enjoy it because of the scenario and the plot. What did you think of those?
The plot is where it's at. I mean, the whole towards the second issue, we get to learn more stuff about this, and I mean, I'll just give a tidbit. They mentioned Atlantis, and that panel alone when they show everything like that is like Atlantis is like, dude, you raised my interest now. It's like I love stories about Atlantis,
Yeah,
you know,
that's cool.
like and just questioning it, like were they good people, were they bad people? Anything that questions or brings anything to do with Atlantis is usually pretty good, unless it's Kelly Sue DeConnick writing it. But
Yeah, there's definitely it's like some the element of fantastic to this. That's cool. It definitely feels like a comic book. Like even the main villain feels like a comic book villain. You can see him on the cover here. Um, this is the one of the guys from the Icarus Society, and as you spoiled or not spoiled, but you said earlier, like they don't really do things for money because they have all the
yeah,
money that they need. Like they're just bored. Like life is not a challenge for them, and so they're constantly trying to figure out new ways, and they're rivals against each other. That's the only thing that they can find any interest. And this particular guy, he chops his hands off and surgically implants chimpanzee hands onto himself because
Yes.
of something to do with, like, it gives him added
Yeah.
dexterity, like, or something, and I'm just like, "Dude, this is such a comic
Yeah.
book villain." Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. So yeah, the hands of the pan troll whatever lights are just more physically dexterous than poor old Homo sapiens.
yeah, it's just like, oh my goodness, it's so
He's like
it's
he's like I didn't lose him by accident or anything. It was actually a very conscious decision. What the hell? It was just weird. I'm like, just shave the fur off then, man. It's just so weird.
it's one of those comic booky things, like, that I miss. I like seeing that, like, I like preposterous worlds, that if you put it it will be interesting to see this in live action. Sometimes when you take comic books and you put them on the screen and you get the live action, the
Well,
preposterous really becomes, like, too much, but
well, I
on a
want to
comic book page, it works.
I want to see how they get this black guy in Africa racing against a cheetah. He's like, the guy's like, you ever been a cheetah before, sir? He's like, well, no, but I close the gap every time I race one. That's all that really matters. What? It's just, it was just so weird, like just out of nowhere. It's just like just to show that he's testing his limits. I don't know. It's just
Yep.
it's I was not expecting it. It just came out of nowhere.
Yeah, he does all sorts of crazy things. You see if you go back and read the first series, the
Yeah.
things that he goes through, and what happens in that series, it's a very different book. The first series is a much more science fiction kinda story, and this the reason I wanted you to read this one is because this one had a more kinda James Bond world villain kinda feel, a big
Now,
global
okay.
espionage story, and
Now
so I knew you liked that
there
stuff.
there is one little. I don't know if you noticed in the grammar when they're showing him when he's about to be bid their the ladies are gonna start bidding on him. The guy who's running says, "When am I bid for?" Edison Crane ladies. I was like, what the hell is this? Somebody messed up on the lettering.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, you'll see that on one of the pages when they're start holding the auction and bidding in on. It's in the upper left corner. Is it? I just as I saw that I was like that doesn't make sense. Like I read it 3 different times. I was like, maybe I'm just not getting it. And I was like, what am I bid for, Edison Crane ladies?
Huh, I'll have to go back and look at that. It's not something where the character speaks broken English or something?
No, it's the guy running the auction. Because then he goes on and says the world's eighth richest man, but surely the most eligible bachelor. Yeah, like it was just a grammar. I guess somebody messed up with the wrong word.
Oh, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe, maybe when they say what am I starting the bid for, or
If
what's the
Stan were
starting bid?
still with us, you'd win a no prize.
You know what? You know what though? Stan did this too. In
Oh,
Fantastic
yeah, I mean,
Four.
this is errors have
I
been
know.
in the history of comics, yeah.
I just because I read that today and I was like, what am I reading here? He just I was reading, I was like going through it, everything's flowing. I was like, my brain hurts now. But uh hey, Skip Chat says Gary Stew since he has balls.
I cannot either confirm nor deny that. We have not seen Edison's Crane's junk in this book.
Thank God.
Uh, Prodigy, Damnation.
$2 million, 3 million, 4. He's mine, you witch. I was like, what the hell? There is some humor in this book.
Yeah, I really love this book. I hope you found some enjoyment out of it.
I did find some enjoyment out of it. Like I said, it's not my cup of tea though. It's not when I really get over. But I mean, I'll probably stick with it to figure out, where it's gonna go. Maybe it'll get better, or maybe it'll just get horribly worse. I don't know. Um, I don't can't really judge Mark Millar. I can't say his writing sucks because I haven't really read anything by him. The only thing I've ever heard brought up about him was Jupiter Ascending or whatever that was. Was it Jupiter Ascending? No, no, that's the movie. What is the other one? Jupiter.
Jupiter's Legacy.
That's what it is. Okay, I'm thinking Jupiter's Ascending. I don't think it's yeah, like that's the movie with what's his name's girlfriend or wife now, Ashton
You
Kutcher's
thinking
wife.
Jupiter Ascending? That's the Wachowski siblings movie.
Yeah.
The formerly Wachowski brothers, now Wachowski sisters. Ay, ay, ay.
They've
Well,
always been
this
girls.
I was hoping you would really fall for this, but I appreciate you trying it out, and maybe you'll stick
I don't
with
think
it
it's
and
a
it'll
bad
win you
book.
over.
I It's just the character. I just don't care for the character. It's like he's just needs to be taken down a peg. And I hope his attitude he lightens up. He becomes more compassionate. I guess.
Yeah, I could. Every point you're making is super valid. Um, I'm not sure if that happened though, that he would be as believable. I kind of like the fact that he is arrogant
Like
like that
like
because
he,
I would not
he
imagine him being so above
yeah.
everything and then also just being super humble and like people are usually have humility because they've experienced lower existences. People who are born with a silver spoon in their mouth and they're also like the smartest person in the world. They can do things that most
Like
people can't even dream of
like
doing.
like Mark even makes fun of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire in this.
Yep.
The guy, because the guy's helping him out, he's like, listen, this might be a bad time to ask. I'm going on a big quiz show next week. I wonder if you could be my guy to call if I end up with a difficult question. I was like, really? Yeah, but unless, yeah, so that's a dated reference. So,
Yeah, good. It
but
just I find a lot of fun. This is like a popcorn movie type of thing. I just love the way that it's structured. I look forward to
just
Netflix turning this into a film. I hope they do a good job with it.
it just said it looks no different than some of those comedies, like you'd see with Ryan Reynolds. A little bit. It's got the humor and it's got the suspense, the action stuff. Now, I wouldn't cast Ryan Reynolds in the main role. I mean, I don't know who you'd cast in this.
When I read the first series back in 2018, it's been a while. When I read the first series, I was like, "Oh, this was born for like Will Smith." I was like, "That I totally just saw Will
Honestly,
Smith in the role." I'm not so
you know what
sure
I
these days, but
if this had gone earlier, I would have said Denzel Washington.
yeah, he's really old for this today. I mean, Denzel Washington's
I
an
know,
all-time great,
but
but
Denzel Washington would have been my choice because he's got that whole smart thing going on.
yeah.
What was it? What was it? The Bone Collector, his character. He played a really smart character in that detective. Even though he was paralyzed, but he could still figure out clues and stuff. You know,
Yeah,
and he
and
also comes out.
there's a lot of black actors out there that I
Giancarlo
haven't
Esposito.
gotten big parts, yet. Maybe that this could be the breakout role. I just hope they cast I hope they cast it well, that someone can pull off that level of arrogance and that level of confidence that Edison Crane has.
Giancarlo Giancarlo Esposito.
He's too old. What are you talking about?
Age is but a number. He's the
Oh,
smartest guy.
jeez Louise.
If he's the smartest man, he doesn't need to use physical force. He
No, but
can
he's
think his
also
way
a
out of it.
daredevil. He's a physical guy.
No, that's the villain.
No, he is. The
No, oh, the
the
Daredevil part. In issue 2.
yeah, I mean, he part of one of the things he does is more established in the first series is that he does these
Yeah.
like crazy stunts for children's charities. Um, so let's see. Skip and Tosh has joined us in the meantime. Welcome, Aloise, Dominic Powell. Shout out to you guys. Indie Comic Jones. Hello, hello. Um, HR
Yeah.
Goes Vocal says he's loving King of Spies. That's another Mark Miller book. If you like spy book, that's a great spy book, and it's with an artist that you really like. Oh, tip of my tongue. Um, the
You know
guy
the
who
part
did
that
the White Knight.
Sean Murphy?
No, the White Knight. Harley Quinn series. That artist. I don't know why I'm
Or
drawing a
Curse the White Knight or White Knight?
the White Knight Harley Quinn.
Oh, wasn't that his? Well, that wasn't his. That's
No, the
I think that's
artist.
I don't know who the artist is.
Oh gosh, someone in chat's gonna tell us.
If it's not Dan Mora, I have no idea.
Right? It's
Because it wasn't Rosmo. Uh,
the only artist he knows. I love this artist. I don't know why I'm blanking on his name. Um, Matteo Scalera.
okay, yeah.
Fantastic art in this book. Holy cow!
Sclera. It sounds like a disease. Yeah.
yeah, it does. Um, this book is. I don't want to derail, but I know you like spy stuff. This book is written like a tribute to Pierce Brosnan and
Oh,
James Bond.
oh, yeah. King
So
of Spies was my next one to read.
yeah, very very good. Um,
And yet, Skip, I did finish. Well, I got all caught up with Paradiso. It is excelente.
I need
It's
to catch
awesome.
up on that. Maybe we can. I don't know. Maybe see if I can get in Paradiso next. I don't know. Maybe that's something I could make a goal to
I
read
went to
during the
go.
week.
I went to go look for actual physical copies in my stores. There was no trades. There was no even back issues. I was like,
Yeah,
dang.
it's a low print run.
Yep.
Um, see,
I'll have to go see if they have a trade at all and discount trades.
Dominic
Or
says
and
he likes Prodigy and he's currently reading Icarus Society. All right. What do you think about this current book series, Dominic? Do you like it better than the first one, or do you like the first run better? Indie Comics Jones says Will Smith, the Dodgers catcher. Yeah, that's exactly who I was thinking of. Um,
Big Willie. That's all you had to say.
let's see.
I mean, where else? I mean, in Prodigy, are you gonna find a guy talking about Clark Gable,
Indie
doing
Comics
propaganda films for Hitler?
Indie Comics Jones says he gives Prodigy a not recommend. Boo. Uh,
I don't, I'm in the middle. I am Switzerland.
you're supposed to be neutral. Um, let's see. All right, so I think I caught up. Well, I guess Indie Comic Jones. I should probably, if you did a review on that, I should go check it out and see what you didn't like. I did also a video on the first issue. I really like it. I think Millar is a hell of a comic book storyteller. Um, and judging by his massive success, I'm not alone.
Mm,
So, shall we get to the
play a
main
game. Oh,
event?
hello, Doctor Faulkner. Would you like to play a game? Sure. Let's get there. Let's get to issue 19 of the boys.
Issue 19 of The Boys. So, for those of you that may be watching this for the first time, Late Night Comics is sort of just a late night variety stream where we talk about whatever's on our mind about books. We introduced a new thing tonight where each one of us recommends a different book to each other to try out and see if it wets our whistle, just to kind of get us experiencing things that we normally don't. And then I don't know if it's the main thing, but it's just sort of the regular thing is that we're going through a series of books that can allow us to think of it like a reading club. That's what I call it. It's like a reading club, and allows us to go through a book and read it and be able to talk about it. Because one of my favorite things, and I think there's a lot of you out there that are the same way. You like reading comics. You like being able to discuss it with other people. Um, that's got to be why you come and watch channels like this, why you watch Indie Comic Jones, why you watch any reviews. You want to see what other people think about the books, and some of you find it enjoyable to talk about it yourself. So that's what this is about, and it's just uh, you know being able to. I want to go through the boys in the particular. We're talking about the boys, and it's a chance to not like I don't want to sit and read it in the privacy of my home and then close the book and I'm done and then I move on and never get to share that experience with anyone.
He wants
So
to be the guy in the red robe, velvet robe, in the
whoa,
chair with the
whoa.
flare behind him on camera
Um,
with the plate.
so that's
I
what this is
close
all
that
about.
book. That's tune in next week as we go to the next chapter. Good evening.
So that's what
That's
that's
what I
all
want.
about, and this is where we are, and we're going through one sort of story arc at a
Story arc.
time. So we're going through the trades. This is the volume 3 of the trades, and it's
Part
this
2 of volume 3. There's only two arcs in this
yeah, there's
in
2
volume
arcs
3.
and this particular one is called
I
I
tell you
Tell You
no
No
lie,
Lie.
GI.
Yes. And why don't you take it away? What do you think of how this story started off?
Ah, well, it crashed and burned in the very first few pages. It tells you more about Vought American. I thought it was actually very interesting. For those want to know how Vought got its start, uh, and just learning more and more about Vought American. The whole company being told by the legend. He was learning a lot about it. I mean, then you had. Do you actually now, like Stranger Things, we had three things going on at the same time. But these three things, I actually give a crap about.
You don't like it
Uh,
when stories have multiple threads playing at once, do
it
you?
well, if it's something, if I'm enjoying those characters, but Stranger Things had characters, they had their own story arcs separate from the other ones that they, even though they tied them in at the end, I just didn't care for those characters. I just felt like you should have got rid of them. They were
Right.
gone.
Well,
You got
not
out.
Stranger Things. We're talking about the boys.
And the boys,
Stay
I
on
know. As I
topic.
said,
Stay
I'm
on
saying I
topic.
actually you asked me about those stories. As I said, so this actually felt more. Is actually more important to the story because what the Huey and the Ledger talking about will come back towards the end of the third issue. Tells you more about who the seven are, how they came to be, the Vought, and all that stuff. So, and then, like I said, it's just a lot better. Um, the other thing is we got Homelander having a meeting on top of I guess the bridge, was it?
Brooklyn
The
Bridge,
Brooklyn
yeah.
Bridge.
The
Yeah,
destroyed
what's left of
Brooklyn
it.
Bridge.
Yes, with the flag there, and he's talking to Homelander. And then down there you got Frenchie and the rest of the boys. And then there's the rest of the seven down there. Everyone for A Train and Annie, Starlight. They're busy with a lamplighter. Like,
Yeah, so I want to pause you for a second. So one of the
yeah,
interesting things I like about what's going on in the comic book is something that I noticed early on, and I think we talked about this a little bit. Is that we saw in one of the early stories that there was a New York skyline and the Twin Towers were still there,
yep,
and I had made some comment about like, oh, I guess this is like happened. It's an alternate history, like the Twin Towers. This book actually kind of explains. So 9/11 did happen, but it happened differently than in the real world because Vought was around and things went differently. And the Twin Towers didn't get destroyed, but the Brooklyn Bridge did. And we're going to see why that happened in this particular story. I also really like, just in general, I like when stories take historical things and then sort of play on it and they like add fiction to it and then build on it. And so we get to learn in this story that in World War II, towards the very end of World War II, um, Vought had built these. Well, they weren't called Vought back then; they were called VAC. But they had built
yeah,
these planes to replace the whatever planes were being used at the time, and they were just dog shit. They were crap, and like American pilots were getting killed. And the only thing that really
yeah,
saved them was that we dropped bombs, the atom bomb on Japan. They surrendered.
yeah.
But they go throughout
The
the
play,
story
yeah.
to tell
They tell
basically
you,
how Vought failed and failed and failed until a certain
yep.
part that we'll get to, but I'll let you continue off where you were.
That first page though, and then they tell you in the World War II, the planes they were given were basically they would stall. Uh, if you baked them too hard, they would stall, and the machine guns on them would jam. So people were just basically the coffins dying, and you saw that one guy lit on fire and just went in the ocean.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, like I said, they go through each war through this. We haven't got to Vietnam yet, but it basically Legends telling him he's like, the thing about VOD, they're everywhere. You know, they're in the White House. They got their hands in this. We learn more about the Veep, the VIP president. and then more about the president himself. And we get this little scene here with where A Train, and at first I didn't really, I was going through this, and I didn't realize that was Starlight at first. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is Starlight, because they showed the princess at first, Maeve. And then all of a sudden, because I'm like, A Train's talking to somebody. I'm like, oh, I see the princess over there, and I'm like, oh, it's Starlight. Okay, they go in there. I'm like, they got a mop and a bucket. What are they doing? Because they're, and they got to go in by lamplighter. Basically, we learn that is actually a zombie, like Barney Clock from last week's show. We talked about that previous couple of issues. Lamplighter came back as a zombie, and he basically has been trying to light his lamp with his feces ever since.
This is really
Because I
gross.
yeah, it is. Look at there's a turd on the bottom right left corner. You see
Lots of
that?
turds. He's covered in his own feces. This is gross.
It's on the
Like the wall,
wall.
look the wall, look at the wall. Yeah, just it's nasty.
But if you go down, there's a big turd right there. But
Yep.
move your arrow all the way down to the right of his lamp. Uh, and you get to learn more about Homelander, and then just he's talking the whole entire time, trying to figure out what's going on. Uh, and Butcher refuses to say a word. You hear the deep of the water in the French. He starts laughing because he just can't, because the guy looks so stupid. Come on, the
What
water.
really did it, like in the show, they make the Deep kind of a mockery, but he doesn't actually look dumb. In the comic books, the way they make Deep a mockery is to completely make him look stupid. It just his whole character is
Helmet,
just yeah. It
the
just
diving helmet, and the cape. It just looks like Luke Cage chain running
yeah.
around his shoulder. It is, yeah. It's so now we get now to Vietnam, where we learn that the guns that was provided by Vought jammed up, didn't work. So when they almost lost the war with that, actually that is why they lost the war, because of that.
Part of it.
You know, yeah.
The one of the biggest battle losses that we had was just a big battle, and the guns all failed, and Americans got slaughtered, and it was a massive PR problem. And you can see here the New York Times, did a paper, an article on it, and then they talk about how Bobby Kennedy catapulted his race on it. They're just kind of playing on this history that's not really real, but is also blended in with actual real history, so it feels real enough. It feels, and this whole thing is Huey is just learning, and we're learning through Huey where Vault came from. This is sort of the origin of Vought, why they are who they are, and how they came to be what we know them as today.
All right, back at this, and they're just talking back and forth. And I love how she says, like, she's like, "You have speed parts, can do." He's like, it's like, I'm that great at that. They say it's like, and then they bring up Huey's girlfriend. He's like, just it just, and then Starlight says she feels sorry for Lamplighter, you know, and then he's like, and A Train basically says, he should have died just like how Barney Clock died. There's a reason we're doing this. They should just kill him. And then we get more Butcher talking to Homelander. Homelander's trying to figure out what's going on. Why do he hate? Because he doesn't know why Butcher hates him so much. And Butcher
And the
kind of just
key
kind
thing
of
is a Butcher doesn't actually talk. The whole
no,
conversation is one sided from Homelander,
yeah,
and Butcher just sitting there the whole time as Homelander's
and he
just
and he
can't
yeah,
figure
and he's
things out.
but he does say one thing. I can hear. He says, "I can hear your heart rate. I know your face is probably still, but I can tell when you react to things." And it goes back to what when they first met, the group and stuff and everything. And, and just yeah,
They
they
talk
just say
about
what,
why there's a peace, like because
yeah,
Homelander's like, we had a treaty. What's going on? Like, there's a truce, and so they allude to the fact that there was a time that they had met before, and shit went down, and it went down bad. And we get one panel that's,
a lot of blood on the floor and the
yeah,
plane and
pretty
everything.
just harrowing, where the boys faced off apparently against the Seven, and things didn't go good. Um, and Homelander kind of says all this, and he's questioning, and he just doesn't understand why. He's like, "Why are you risking this truce? What's going on?" And Butcher just stays silent the whole time. And then we get sort of the origin of Homelander,
Yep.
which is a very Superman-esque type origin
So
about how a
that's
meteor
you, baby.
crashed down into a
Yep.
prairie field and all this stuff, and it came from space. And then the legend just basically explains like it was all crock of shit. Like he was grown in a lab, and that's just
Yeah.
the story.
He was
Um,
brought in to do the comic book to tell the origin.
and the legend, right? Legend is very much the legend is Stanley in this
Yeah.
sense. Like he's the one that writes all these books, and he's kind of explaining to Huey too, like why he does this, why why even do these books, and this part of it is about control. That these superheroes, the reason why the superheroes, he kind of explains like they don't go off and try to take over the world and things like that because they realize they have a good gig. They get to be heroes, they get to be celebrities, and people like the legend will write books, and they basically they're like spin doctors, right? They write the books to make everything look all nice and wonderful. They don't, you know, and not how reality is, and it makes them look all good. It makes them like stars. And then there's some few he explains that, go off and try to rebel or do, but then they get shut down by the heroes. And it all kind of is this machine that takes care of itself. And it's kind of things you would have expected, but the legend puts it out in concrete terms so you as the audience now understand, okay, this is what's all really happening and what's going on in this world.
Yep.
Um, so it's a lot of that. I don't want to sit here and kind of linger on all the details of the discussion. That's basically summing it up. I really enjoyed it though. I really like Garth Ennis's voice. Um, it really made me feel like what's going on in this world. Um, I also personally like that there's multiple story threads going on at a time. The Homelander uh, Butcher converse pseudo conversation on the bridge I found very interesting because this is not a Homelander I'm familiar with, right? I'm familiar with the TV show Homelander.
Where he's already mentally unstable and everybody lives with fear. This one's kind of like smart.
Yeah, this one I don't know where the similarities begin and where they end. So I can't presume that I know everything about him. So I'm gripped to everything that happens. I'm like, okay, what really is going on? Is it like the show? Is it different than the show? I don't know. Let's find out. And he's talking to Homelander this whole time, and he's like, Homelander's talking to Butcher the whole time, and Butcher's not talking. And finally, he's like, you know what? You can keep a straight face, and not give anything away, but I can hear your heartbeat, and that tells me everything. And he starts keying in on certain things, and he comes here on this page where he's just like, oh, it was a lover, hot. And more than just a lover, am I right? Hot, yes. Hot, hotter, by the second. Wife. And he knows that he's kind of got Butcher triggered. Um, and so we get more of the history. The legend explains how he actually volunteered to take Homelander as sort of his, the Homelander comic. Um, and we don't exactly know why, but it gets
Here you
explained
go.
later.
Realistically, what happened in real life, and then there's a comic form.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. This is where he was explaining to Huey about how in the comic book he gets to tailor it for the audience, and then in reality they don't actually see the reality part. Um, and then the third strings, the third storyline that's kind of going on simultaneously is the A Train and the Starlight story. And earlier in the story, uh, he had like put her down and said something about how like she had like you know she was the one that got on her knees and had three cocks in her mouth or something like that. They're really demeaning to her.
And then
And
she pretty much like gets him back, and she says like, yeah, I
here it
love how
is
you're
right
whining.
here.
Well, before the page, she said, "I love how you're whining sped it up from 60 minutes." Yeah.
Yeah,
Then
because
she, yeah,
she's they're just basically bitching at each other because they hate each other. Um, and then she says to him, just sting right here. It's like, well, I'm glad it worked out for you because it's the only way someone like you could ever get your hands on someone like me. And that just sets him off. He's just like, oh, you think so? And
so
you're like,
as
uh
far as we
oh,
know, yeah, he's gonna say something else. So it's like, okay,
uh oh, you
eventually,
think
yeah.
so?
A Train has been stupid no matter if he's in the comic book or in the show. I've noticed that.
Yeah,
Oh,
he's a
I'm sorry.
different kind of way different character in the comic version here. He's
No, and
much
like,
more of a bastard. The
yeah,
the A Train in the show is he's stupid and he's selfish, but he's not a total scumbag the way this guy is. Like this guy's just a douche. The other one
yep.
is more of like a guy who doesn't have the he doesn't have the he's lacking of virtue. He can't stand up for anything good. He's a complete sellout. He's like, "Oh, I can just be a star and I just keep my mouth shut. Okay, I'll do that." And to the point where he lets his brother get practically killed. Um, but I like this part
Yep.
too. The next is as the legend story is going on to Huey, he starts talking about basically the corporate uh, infighting. Because the thing about when Vought discovers Compound V, it puts them ahead. They've been a complete screw up corporation in the military industrial complex this whole time, right? We saw the failure in World War II, we saw the failure of Vietnam,
Explains, yeah, yeah.
but he explains how like when they came up with V, they finally did something right, you know, and no one could compete with them. And what I find interesting is and they don't do this in the show, at least not yet, is they talk about Vought has a bunch of enemies. And and in fact, they have the entire military industrial complex united against them because Vought's the only one that can do the super characters and none of the others can and they realize this and so they're mutually, you know, enemies. And that's a big enemy to have. The show doesn't really go into that and that they probably won't, I imagine, but we'll see. But I found that very fascinating because I was like, oh yeah, military industrial complex is be a powerful, you know, especially for the boys. Like if the boys needed allies, knowing that Vought has got powerful enemies puts it just puts things in a different perspective as far as I'm concerned.
Now, logically, you could say, well, why can't they just take out the send in assassins to kill the Vought people at top? Because Homelander doesn't seem to care who gets killed or whatever, because he's top dog.
Yeah. Also, in this, it's interesting. I find out in this book, Homelander's not. He's a bad dude. I'm not
He's
going to
not
try to. I'm
crazy,
not going to sugarcoat it. He's also
but he's
not the complete psychopath that he is in the show.
no, no,
But
but he is cocky though.
there is a little bit of good in him that
Yeah,
is absent from the show version, and we're going to see uh, as this goes on. So the conversation goes, and Butcher gets the last laugh because this whole time that Homelander's been talking, Terror's been pissing on his boot, and Homelander didn't even know. And I really liked. I don't know. You tell me what you thought too, but I really like this scene
yeah.
where he's getting pissed on the boot, and Homelander's like, "Oh, you fucking little," and Butcher's just laughing. And he's like, "You
You
harmed
harm
one hair
one
on his
there,
head, and it starts now, right this second. No fucking about now." And Homelander's like, "Over a dog? Over my dog."
and
And
it
then
goes
Butch
hot or cold.
yeah, hot or
Because
cold. You just
that's
dude,
because that's what.
this
For those, hot or cold is out of context because I don't think we explained that. Before he was trying to, Homelander was playing the hot or cold game. He would ask a question and see how Butcher would react. So
right,
that's
am I
why he's
getting
saying hot or
warmer? Am I
cold.
getting colder? Right. This I just love this scene because this established that Butcher is the alpha male here. Like
Yep.
he
Yep.
Homelander's got all this raw power stuff and Butcher doesn't bat an eye. He's like, "You harm one hair on his head, it starts right now, right this second. No fucking about now." And I
Right.
the only thing that I wish is that Butcher didn't have this sort of like cartoony face look that the artist draws him. I wish this looked like the TV show Butcher because that guy's terrifying.
He
But
looks like Peter Venkman. Bill Murray.
Yeah, imagine Bill Murray saying these lines. It just doesn't have the same weight.
That's
Um,
hysteria.
but I mean, look at Homelander's reaction. He's shaking. He's like, You're insane. If this is how you want it, that's okay by us. But as of this moment, you can start doing your worst." And then he just keeps talking, and Butcher's just like, "Fuck off, cunt." Just I
Well,
don't
but
even listen. He just walks away, and Homelander's just like, "Ugh," triggered.
well, but Butcher knows that if it starts again, he'll lose. At least he's got that. Probably because doesn't trust the people who is working with him,
Yeah,
and
but I mean, he doesn't give up that
and then
feeling
there,
1 ounce. He
well,
basically plays the hand as if he has all the cards, and Homelander
also,
backs off. Homelander is in the power position, but he doesn't know it.
yeah.
Butcher is basically bluffing, on a 2-7, hand. It's just, it,
Well, the fact that Butcher is the only one who talks to him like this too probably
yeah,
really gets under his skin.
and I just love the way that Homelander's is like, ah, he can't do it. He doesn't know what to do. Uh, really well
Well,
played.
well, but he is still just like they said in the comic books. And they were showing how he's like 1 week, he was in an infant, and then the next week, he was a teenager, and so and so. So at the time when it was made, he grew up so fast. Now they didn't keep now as far as keeping locked up, I'm not sure, but now we get to my favorite part of the comic book series. For those who watch the show, it's the airplane.
Yeah,
Part 3 of I
they
Tell You a Lie.
not exactly the way of the show.
Yep.
But
Now
this
we're
is
getting
where
to
part 3 is
9/11.
9/11. 9/11
Yep.
is happening, and the president is Dakota Bob, which we saw him back here. This is the comic version of Dakota Bob here on the left. Um,
Yep.
he's a big chin, strong male. The Dakota Bob that's in the show, I wish they would have made him more like this, but the show has its own aspirations of what it's doing. Um, but the
They're going
Dakota
for the
Bob in the
child.
comic book is basically a no nonsense, ass whooping fucking alpha president.
He's
Is what they're.
Sam Lane.
Yeah, he's there we go. He's and basically in this version of events in 9/11, the president was Dakota Bob, and when the airplanes were going to crash in the tower, he called in the Air Force, shot down 2 of them, and the third one, however, that gets called off, and the pilots are like, "What? What the hell? What are you talking about?" And they get called off, and then we come to find out that the 7 are
The
there.
debut. Yeah, the debut of them.
Yeah, they're flying and they're intercepting the plane, and the way that it plays out is almost comical because this is Garth Ennis writing a comic book, but as if it weren't a comic book, as if it he's like, if in reality this were to happen, this is how it would play out. In comic books, you do crazy things and the characters always work together perfectly and all this stuff. He's like, these are a bunch of a-holes in spandex that think they're the shit and they've never done anything like this in their life. And and physics actually matter. And he plays out and you can see like the deep, it just gets
Now, now
go ahead.
I want to point out because the bottom right corner, you see this little kid. His name's Michael. If you read the comic book, after this page where they're ripping the door off, he's like, "Don't worry, mom, we're gonna be okay." They have very next page is like in loving memory of Michael Turner. And
Yeah.
then you get this here on
I
the
don't know what
left.
I don't know what to say about that. I have to choose to believe that that was a coincidence.
There was another ad besides that, but still, I was just like, I just laughed. I was like, that is the worst product placement because Michael after the loving memory of Michael Turner.
Yeah. That's an unfortunate coincidence. Um, so yeah, that this it's a funny scene. If you read this book with your tongue in cheek, if you read it as knowing this is sort of Garth Ennis's dark sense of humor, and if you have one yourself, I think you're gonna. I found this hilarious. I don't know why you shouldn't, but it's the absurd.
Oh
Like Homelander's like, oh,
yeah,
and the kid, you can see him down here. He's just like, oh, mom, we're saved. It's all gonna be great. And then Homelander pulls off the door and he just gets sucked out.
the
You're just
kid's
like,
gone.
and then Maeve is like, oh shit, and then Michael, and it's like, we're here to
We're here.
help, and the mom's like panicking, Michael, no, and Homelander's like, calm down for Christ's sake. He just can't be bothered. He's such a narcissistical, just uh has no ounce of human emotion type of thing. It's just like, oh mother, you just lost your kid, shut up. Like and then the people are like, oh my god, it's them, and everything just goes wrong. This
Especially, and I blame it because of the deep. The deep is it would really cause everything to go wrong.
They
I've
all
seen that.
do in a way, but Deep, yeah, the Deep does, of course, he does a bad thing. Now, I got a question for you because I just started thinking about this. I love how the whole plane sequence worked in the show, and it was really harrowing, and I don't have any complaints. But after reading the book now and seeing how the sequence goes down in the book, I kinda I know it
Yeah, the
wouldn't have
terrorist.
worked.
Yeah,
It wouldn't
yeah,
have worked for the show, but I kinda wish I could have seen it. Like, I think it plays out better in the book. This to me is much more frantic and chaotic and just like, "Oh my god,"
yeah.
just like,
Yeah, the
what did you
terrorist.
think?
The terror. Well, and this is different because the terrorists had killed the only this where in the show the terrorists were in the alley where they're standing right now, and the Homelander was killing them, and then and the pilots were still alive in the show, I believe. But yeah, so I thought this was really like I was like, wow, this almost word for word. Like we're here to help, exactly. And the whole that scene right there where the kid flying out, that they did exactly the same in the show. Uh, now we know why Maeve drinks. At least the princess here. This could be a big factor. Why? Because like you
Right,
sit down all year.
that's an important thing to remember is that this is a flashback. This happened
Yes,
in 2001. So this is not the Maeve that we see just sitting around, drunk all the time.
yes.
But we also get to
Uh,
see other 7. We get to see, like,
yeah,
was his the Pluto guy who's the Martian Manhunter
yeah,
ripoff. He's
yeah,
just
yeah,
like, "No
yeah.
fucking way, I'm outta here." He just, like, takes off. Um,
And then the other guy who's supposed to be like a speedster, I think. Not sure what his powers
yeah,
are, but like, yeah,
Marathon Man. That's A
Marathon
Train's
Man. Yep.
predecessor. So in the
Yes.
comics, there was a predecessor before A Train, and this we find out why he's a predecessor because he kind of bites the bullet here. Um, but
And
yeah,
here go
so
the deep punching the windshield of the plane, and it flies off. I was like, "Are you kidding me?" It's like, "Why would you punch a windshield?" Oh, I'm gonna punch it. And it's like, wow. But they kept, yeah. Of course, it does gets all covered up, and then you look at the because the glass flies in, and just you see Homelander just covered in blood because the guys get shripped
yeah, so he punches the
shrapnel. Yeah,
glass. Yeah, the glass basically
yeah.
turns into shrapnel, rips the terrorists who are all in the pilot seats.
And you can see their faces flying past them.
Oh, gross. I mean, just
Yeah, no,
the way that these panels they play out, the chaos and the utter just debacle that this turns into. It's so much more intense than even the show was. And like I said, I love the show. I'm not trying to pick on the show in any way. It worked really well for what the show was, but I just love here. I'm like, I kind of wish I just could have seen it because this is just so much more intense. It's so much more over the top than even the show was, in my opinion. Um, like you
yeah,
said, like you
it's
see the faces of these guys, like just flying
you're
past Homelander, and he's now covered in blood. And then Maeve's like, "Come on, we got to get out of here. Trust me." And she's pulling him away. And we have other characters too. I forget what this guy's name is. The
it is Marathon Man.
Was that Marathon Man? Oh yeah, that's
Yeah, he
Marathon
got
Man.
in.
That's Marathon
Wolverine.
Man. Yeah. And he's like, "Guys, what do we do now?" And here's the thing: some of these characters can't fly. If you remember in the beginning, some of the 7, were holding him up, and so now they're on a
Yep.
plane, and only some of the
Uh,
characters can fly, and shit's just going down.
their
And
their
finally, we
their pi their pilot was Black Noir.
Black Noir, who got ejected like way at the beginning, and finally we see Homelander's like, "Fuck this," and he's like, what'd you say? Where you going?" And Maeve's like, "Hold on a second." He just backhands her. And this is where I say, like, Homelander, there's an ounce of good in him because yes, he's screwed up and he does something here that's not really what a good person would do, but his motivation right now is to save these people. In the
Well,
comic version, he's not the
yeah.
one to be like, "Let them all die, we got to go." Maeve is the
No,
one that
yeah.
wants to like let them
Well,
all
actually,
die and go.
no, actually,
And
no. Go. Actually, you're wrong. Go back. He says
okay.
at the bottom. He says, "Fuck this," and he says like, "Was like, where are you going?" What do you say? Uh, you're 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 fogging up there. You're fuzzy trying to read it. He's like, they're like, save us, Homelander! Oh my god!" And Homelander flies out. Maeve is back there in the cockpit. He left, but no, but he didn't. Then he's gonna go try to actually save the plane, but he doesn't know how to save the plane. But he wants to protect, the rest of the city. So yeah,
Remember the
Homelander,
before this, he was gonna
yeah.
like try to fly the plane, and then Maeve is like, "We can't. It's
At
covered
first,
in guts." like we,
but then he decides to give up. That was
yeah,
the
because
thing right
everyone's
there.
basically telling him it's hopeless. Um, and he kind
Rip,
of
yeah.
he unintentionally saves Marathon Man, but he ends up flying back to the plane, and he's gonna try to like help steer its course so it can crash land or whatever. But again, like I said, this is Garth Ennis, like these dipshits, they don't understand physics or whatever. So you can kind of predict what's gonna happen.
Yeah, yeah. Marathon Man says you're going in too fast. So is the plane, you stupid prick, says Homelander.
Right.
And
And then he
he goes straight through
goes
the plane.
and yeah, just boom, goes through the plane. He's like, and then Homelander's like,
Oh,
fuck. And then
fuck! Did you see that, Marathon Man?
so Maeve's like, Maeve's trying to get out of here, and the people are like, don't let her go. And oh fuck, did you see that Marathon Man? Marathon? Oh, dude, like I said, just debacle, one thing after the next, just constantly. And then finally,
Yeah,
Maeve, like, she just
flies
like,
out.
but look how she flies out. She has to go through the people, and she
Yes,
just obliterates them. And
I
you're
know.
like, oh my god, like these guys are just the worst. Um, but I guess, I mean, if they're gonna die anyway, I don't know. Like, which is it worse? Do you want to get plowed through like that, or do you want to be one of the people flying out of the plane and knowing you're gonna die for a couple minutes before you hit the ground? Uh, it's just
This is
terrible.
why I need. This is why I need parachutes on planes.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah, that wouldn't work. But uh, so the plane crashes into the Brooklyn Bridge. We kind of knew that was gonna happen because we've seen the Brooklyn Bridge destroyed.
Because originally originally the plan was that this plane was heading towards the World Trade Center,
Right.
and they diverted it
Right.
into
They
the
shot one of
bridge.
them down, and then um,
Yeah,
it would have gone. Yeah, because the boys, not the boys, sorry, the seven
7, yeah,
screwed
goes
this
in the
all
bridge.
up. The plane, they could cut the tail off the plane. It's going down and crashes, and yeah, so he's basically explaining. And then one of the things we learned here is that Huey's just like, but you said you had a source, like from the horse's mouth, and it's like Huey's starting to learn that the legend is closer to things than maybe he would have thought. And then we get the other thread. We're in the last issue here, where we go back to Starlight and A Train. They're finishing up things, and A Train has locked her in the hangar. And yeah, this is where Huey's like, how do you know what happened on the plane? I mean, you said it came straight from the horse's mouth. And then Legend's like, did I? Yeah, I guess I did. You just see his shit-eating grin.
Yep.
Um, and so that part's going on. We go back to the hangar, and this is where A Train is going to try to rape Starlight. And this is where we get to see Starlight actually her powers for the first
Yep.
time. Because you got to remember, when this book was made, there was no show. No one knew what Starlight even was other than her name.
Yep.
And yeah, so she blasts him a bunch of light, blinds him, and of course that just pisses him off. And I love the unrestraint that Garth Ennis writes. Right, this book would not be able to be made today. I don't think. Well, maybe it would. I guess they're still making issues, but just the way A Train talks and stuff, like he talks like an asshole. He's like, "Yeah, you bitch, you fucking blinded me. I'm blind. You tried to
Yeah.
rape me, you prick." They're just going off. Look at his pants are down. And then Homelander shows up, and
I know anything.
he's not having it, man. He just got fucking he just got virtually bitch slapped by Butcher, and his ego is all sorts of wounded. And A Train just like, oh, the Homelander. He's just whining to her, that she blinded him and all this stuff. And Homelander just grabs the front end of this jet, tosses it, looks him in the eyes, basically just has him cowering like a puppy and just walks away. Um, basically showing, who's boss because Homelander's not used to not being the boss.
He felt well, of course, Homelander felt emasculated because what Butcher did to him.
Yeah, that was definitely
So,
a
so yeah,
dick measuring
yeah,
contest on that bridge.
yeah. I can.
And
I see what
Butcher
I'm just
won.
playing. I'm just playing. Yeah. So yeah, so I can see why he's now doing that shit. But yeah, I get to see more of the legend talking to them, and then you know, yeah,
This is where they get that the legend explains to Huey that the Seven are the target. He's like, "They're the target, kid. Haven't you figured that out yet?" And he was like, "The target? Well, I know that they're the biggest soups, and we're meant to be keeping them in line." But Legend's like, "Ha ha! Do me a favor. The next time you're with the butcher, take a really good look at him and ask yourself if that's a guy remotely fucking interested in management." And then it's kind of just dawns on Huey. It's like that's their mission statement. Like we're here to watch the soups and do stuff, but this is more than a
then we
job
then we
for
get to,
Butcher.
you know, then we get to learn about Lamplighter and why he is the way he is. It's just, Homelander, but Lamplighter went to go looking for Mallory, who was a former member of the boys, but didn't find
Oh,
him.
that's
Decided
right.
he,
Not just a former
yeah,
member of the boys. He's the founder of the boys.
yep.
And that's a character. Is he in the show? I don't think they mentioned like Mallory at all in
No,
the
just
show.
Lamplighter though is in there.
Lamplighter's in the
Lamplighter
show.
got
Yeah,
killed.
they use him completely different in the show, but Mallory, this Mallory is Colonel Mallory. This is a guy that formed the boys, and he's the guy who recruited Butcher. And I guess uh, Lamplighter killed Mallory's two daughters. And this is where we learn about the truce, why there's the truce. And there was a peace offering.
Sacrifice.
So,
And Butcher got to shoot the Lamplighter in the head or basically kill him.
yeah. So that's I
And
really
that
enjoyed like this history and this world building and like how we got to where we are. It fills in a lot of the pieces. So this stuff was all very interesting to me, even though it looks like a lot of words.
Yep, Butcher had files in himself, so that basically Homelander made peace to him because otherwise, because he knew they'd be fucked if basically if Butcher released all the information, all this stuff. And just how this one guy's part of the Seven did this to this yeah, yeah, just so yeah, I think Lamplighter was totally different in the show. They actually used the guy that's it's one of the brothers. It's just two twins. Um, there's the one that played Iceman in the X-Men movies for Fox, and there's another one who played Jimmy Olsen on Smallville. But yeah, but I thought this was short and quick for Lamplighter. Didn't really need him in there. In the
Oh
show,
yeah,
he was actually more used, but no, but
yeah, but it established kind of that some of that background to the boys that I thought was really cool. Um, just some interesting bits that just make it feel more three dimensional, make the world feel richer. Um, and we get this explanation basically of like why Huey's doing what he's doing. And I'm not sure how much I trust the legend. I feel kind of like the legend is still kind of pulling strings too. Uh, because when Huey walks away, he kind of realizes he's like, here, wait a minute, that wasn't the boy's story. That was Vought American. Sorry, that wasn't the boy's story. That was Vought Americans. This whole thing from the start. Ah, come on. It's like I'm no wiser than I ever was. Because the whole point was he was supposed to learn about the boys, and he ended up getting
yeah,
told the story about Vought American instead. And now the
yep.
store's closed. He can't go back. He's like, dang it. And then we get a little after effect with Maeve, like you were talking about, sitting around drinking. Starlight shows up to her, and he's like, she's kind of talking about, about she almost got raped, and Maeve's just like, I'm not your friend, little girl. And she's like, God forbid, but would it kill you to offer me a martini? So we see their relationship starting, and let's see, Butcher gives tickets to Frenchie and the female to go see some
The
hockey games,
the Rangers,
the
New York
Rangers,
Rangers. Yep.
and then Butcher's talking to Huey is about the surveillance tapes that during this whole time, like a year they've been gone, that they've been watching. He's going through, and they're starting to learn some things about what the seven operations are and some interesting things. And then he gives Huey some homework, a file on the G-men, and then finally, we in the epilogue we get to see Huey and Starlight again meeting on their favorite bench, and their little romance is blossoming. She
Yep.
has a little bit of second thought. She's a little shy because she's like, "Are we moving too fast or whatever?" And yeah, so I, I like how their relationship is going.
Yeah.
And then
I
the
like how.
final page.
Yeah.
Hold on one sec. The final page is Butcher kind of fell asleep. He like wakes up. He's like, "Oh, what did we miss?" Because he was watching the tapes, and he sees this videotape, and it's Starlight, and he of course recognizes her, and he's like, "Oh Jesus, fuck me." And then that's the end of this particular arc. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say how compliment what you said about Starlight or Annie saying that to Huey. It's like, aren't you thinking we're a little fast? When he's at the very end, he says, "Well, I can always just kiss you really, really, really slowly." Kind of. But yeah. So this is a very plot moving couple issues. It really sped it up because at first we're kind of like, okay, we're kind of introductions. Like now we're getting more and more and more closer to the meat and potatoes, the story. Even
Yeah.
though we're not that far in, but it makes me wonder like, okay, how much more do we got to go? Are we gonna get fillers? Or are we gonna actually get more story plot chain, progression?
Yeah, neither of these two story arcs to me felt fillery. Like
No.
the last story arc felt very much heartfelt. It was more of the relationship between Huey and Annie.
Setting, yeah, setting up the relationship, and then then the real at the end of the realization that Butcher now knows that she's part of the Seven,
Right. But also I liked that
and something that
was a
Huey doesn't
lot
know
more of
either.
the this arc was a lot more of the world building and setting up like the history of the characters and just
So,
getting you to understand where things have come from, put the pieces of the
so,
puzzle together.
so I'm excited about this because Huey doesn't know that she's a superhero, a super,
Right.
and Butcher just found out.
Right.
So is he gonna tell? Is he gonna tell Huey, or is Huey gonna find out his own way?
I don't know because in the show Huey knows before Butcher does. Like he knows,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yep,
So this is obviously playing out very differently. I expect Butcher is probably going to, you know, like the reason he's got a big grin on his face is because he knows Huey's got an inside.
yep,
And he's like, "Oh, we're inside to the seven," but he doesn't understand Huey's real feelings for her, right? He probably just assumes, "Oh, Huey's just banging this broad," but Huey's actually in love with this girl. So
yep.
there's probably going to be some conflict in there where Butcher just wants to use it, and Huey's like, "I'm not going to use that," and we'll see how it goes. I'm very into this, man. I love this series. Like the more I read this book, the more I just want to go grab like everything Garth Ennis has ever written. I just so
Like
much.
I said, for me, it was rough because isn't I'm not used to this, but now it's the story's found its groove.
Yeah, there's just a certain voice that Garth Ennis has that no one else has, and there are things about the book that I would prefer maybe are different. I don't necessarily love like gratuitous violence and sex and all that stuff. That's not really
Like
my
gore.
jam. But I think the reason why The Boys works for me is because I don't feel like it's really there just to show sex and violence. Like I think it's really there to serve the satire and the absurdity. Like I think Garth is trying to paint a picture that's so just out there, and it only works if you make every single part of it extreme. The violence is extreme, the sex is extreme, every part of it. Just nothing can be done dialed back. And I think that's part of what makes it work. And I think it's because it's all done in humor helps me enjoy it too, that this is all not really being serious.
Yep. Like I said, I'm hoping for the best for Annie and Huey. Hoping they ride this out. They survive.
Yeah, me too.
And there you go. See, volume one of Jennifer's Blood,
I might
which
have to go check that Jennifer Blood out because, like I said, the more and
s-
more I'm loving Garth Ennis, his voice.
Jennifer Blood was a good story by Garth Ennis, and then the next volume was done by, or the next version was by Stephen Grant of all people. I'm like, I got Punisher, both writers, on the book. And then it went to Fred Van Lente, and I was just like, he just lost the whole entire idea for the character and just ruined it. The one that's ended, I was like, this is just shit. Dynamite, you dropped the ball.
Yeah, Fred
Fred Van
Van
Lente,
Linde is not known as a great
he's a good
writer.
writer, but he should not be writing Garth Ennis books. It's like
Can anyone really write Garth Ennis books though?
Stephen Grant.
Yeah,
It's the only person I yeah, because Stephen Grant kept the same tone, the same
hmm.
style. Uh,
All right. Well, let's take some. Let's look at the wrap this up with some the chat. Let's see where we're. There's a lot of stuff was talking while we were talking. Um, Indie Comics Jones says I felt the character Edison Crane was too much of a Harry Sue. I didn't find him interesting. Interesting, you say that, Indie Comics Jones. That's a mouthful to say. I'll just call you Doctor Jones. I don't know
well,
what to call you,
it,
but
I don't call him a Gary Sue, but because he does make a mistake towards the end of the book, he shows he's not perfect, he's not that smart as he thinks he is. But he did come out very like, I can do this, I can do that, and then at the end, it's like the first issue.
well, my take on it,
Trick.
and I did a like I said, I did a video on this, and I said this in my
Yeah.
video. Like, I think that he is a Mary Sue, and I think it was intentional. I think the Prodigy to me comes
Oh,
across as if Mark Miller is like, can a story of a Mary Sue be done? Can it work? Is it possible? And it feels like a almost like a writing experiment. And it to me it works because I feel like it's self-aware of it. And
now,
it's not
if
just
I didn't
trying
think
to
about that, if he is trying to do that and say like it's a Mary Sue, and then the character ends up not being a Mary Sue, it's just to basically get middle finger to the people. They like, oh, character do this, it's a Mary Sue. People don't like it. If he's doing that, trying to be a political dick,
no, I don't think
clickbait.
he's trying to do anything politics wise. I just think from a writing standpoint, there are certain things that you don't want to do in writing. Mary Sue characters are typically one thing. Deus Ex Machina resolutions are another thing where you just sort of have what that is where you just have a resolution to the ending that just sort of comes out of nowhere.
I'll
Deus
just
Ex
say this.
Machina comes from like the hand of God. It's just like,
I,
oh, and then the Eagles showed up at Mount Doom and saved everyone. You're like, what? What the hell just happened? Like, it doesn't feel earned. Those are things. So it's a valid critique to say Mary Sue, but if you say as a writer and you say, well, you know what, I'm going to try to do it and make it work, then I think it's a fair thing. It may not work, and obviously it didn't work for Indie Comic Jones, but it worked for me. So
I'll just say this. I've never read a single Mister Terrific book. If he's even had his own, I don't know if he's even had his own issues by himself. But a guy calls himself Mister Terrific and is supposed to be super smart. He comes off to like a Gary Sue to me. Now that's only based on his name and what I've known about his character. But I writing a story about a guy who's smart than everybody else. You kind of what can you do? You gotta do something else. It's gonna be a huge trait of the character that he's smart, overly smart. But I don't know.
right. Typically, when you do a character like that, though, you throw in weaknesses to make up for it, right? You go, oh, you're super
Yes.
smart, but you're not very physical, or you have other things to balance out. The thing with Edison Crane is he has no weaknesses. He's super
Oh,
physically fit. He's super smart. He's
he's
got no fear.
overconfident.
Yeah, I mean,
That
he
that was his
literally can just
downfall.
do anything. And it's like, oh,
But that was his down but that led to his downfall though, because he became so arrogant, the fact where he was smart and everything. He didn't expect that to be somebody out there who actually could just outsmart him, and that girl did.
Mhm.
I was like, we're all smart until we are blindsided by a woman that we're attracted to.
Yeah, right? There's no amount of smarts that make up for that. Um, let's see, what else?
You always heard about that, where it's like they tell that football player, "Don't have sex. If you have sex, you're not going to play good." He has sex, and all of a sudden he sucks the football game the next day because he had sex.
Dominic Powell says, "Icarus Society is a strong start to the sequel, and so far, it's not a repeat of the first series." Yeah, that's a very good point. It's very, very different than the first series, and I appreciate that they able to Mark took that character, kept the character the same, but managed to put him in a completely different type of story. Um, let's see. Skip says this week's week of comics is going to be very interesting. 20th Century Man is coming out. Denny's Camp is being touted as the next Blazing Rider. I've never heard of that guy. Dominic says, Ashton Venkman, have you two read Wild Card's drawing of the cards? I have not. Have you?
I haven't heard of it.
Wild Cards is new Marvel's. Well, it's a Marvel series based
Oh,
on
wait, you don't
George R. R.
oh, that well,
Martin's book series.
okay, cool. Yeah, I have no care for it.
No care for it.
It just looked kind of eh. No. Now I understand that people like the original one, which I did see sell for like 13 or 14 bucks rose at my comic book store.
I just find it's weird that Marvel is licensing out someone else's superhero universe to do comics for.
I mean,
It's
like
weird to me. Like you already
it,
have the
it,
biggest
it,
superhero universe in the world.
it's like when
Everyone wants
Marvel
to be
back in the
Marvel.
remember back in the Marvel's IPs they were buying or renting, where they're using like RoboCop and stuff by Frank Miller and
Yeah,
and
but
all these
those
different
weren't
ones.
superheroes, right? Like it makes sense to,
Yeah,
but
but
Wild
yeah,
Cards
I know what you're.
is a superhero. It's like you I don't know, it's just weird to me. So, no, I didn't get it. I am interested in reading the books. In fact, I have the first couple of books, I just haven't read them yet. The novels, that is. Let's see. Indie Comic Jones says the actual WW2 plane VOT FU Corsair. No, they actually say in the comic book that the Corsairs were before the VOT plane. The VOT was a made up plane. It was something, I forget what it was, designation. Um, let's see. Tehillim says he definitely enjoys The Darkness and Witchblade with Mark Silvestri art. I believe those were both
Yep.
written by Garth Ennis as well. Have you read those, Venkman?
Uh, I have the volume one by my Mark Silvestri, but it was and they had Michael Turner doing the art. I had that. I
Oh.
got the I think it's volume one Omnibus. That's what I got. Yeah, and it's signed by Mark Silvestri.
I did not know that Garth Ennis wrote those series. And so I was like, because visually they're not my cup of tea, um, just from judging it by the cover, even though I do like both Mark Silvestri and Michael Turner quite a bit.
Yeah.
Um, but now that I'm like, oh, and it's written by Garth Ennis, I will definitely now want to check those out. Dominic says Mallory is in the TV show, but the character has been gender flipped into a woman, Grace Mallory. Oh, that's right. I didn't even see that. Did you see that?
Oh, hold on a second. What did you say?
He says that
Who's
Mallory was in the show, but it was gender flopped. It's Grace Mallory. Remember the lady that was
helping them? Yeah, she's the one that's helping them.
the CIA
Yeah,
director.
Grace. Yeah. Oh,
Oh, wow.
I knew the name Mallory sounded familiar. I just didn't know who it was.
Huh. That's a big difference. Although, but Mallory's dead in the comic. Well, we think he's dead. Actually, we're not 100% sure. Interesting. Very interesting. I'm gonna not a big deal because the show is wildly divergent from the book, so not a big deal. Um, Marania says, I wonder what's going to happen with Annie Huey relationship. Who's going to feed info to the other side? Yeah, I'm curious how it's going to differ from the TV show. Uh, I hope it.
I'm looking up.
One thing I like about the comics so far in relation to the show, and I love the show, but I like that the relationship in the comics thus far feels a lot more pure, and Huey feels a lot more just consistently. In the TV show, I went back and forth with Huey because there were times where I thought his character was getting a little soiled and just not as likable. And I wanted to see the strength of character remain. Like I feel like Huey's kind of an anchor where and to see that character get ruined. I hope that the comic book does. It doesn't seem like it's gonna go that way because it's a much bit different direction in the comics. But
Mm. Yeah, I'm looking up. You're talking about Garth Ennis writing Witchblade. He only wrote Witchblade Spawn.
oh, did he?
He didn't.
I thought I read somewhere that he wrote it.
Medieval Spawn Witchblade. He did
Huh.
that.
Well,
Worked on
okay.
that, but
Did he do the darkness? Maybe I'm
maybe it's the darkness. I'm not sure, but
'cause I could have
yeah,
sworn
because
it was like a couple weeks ago I came across something and it had nothing to do with the boys or anything. It just was like, and it was like Garth Ennis, and I was like, oh, he did this. Like, and it was, like they were selling like an omnibus or something. I was like, what the hell? So I just made a mental note, but maybe I'm delusional.
uh, yeah, he did the boys, the Jennifer Blood, The Shadow. Uh, what was another one he did? We did The Darkness, yeah, with Mark Silvestri. He did do that. 1996 and 1998 collected as a um trade paperback book. There was one, and then there's a Heart of Darkness, collection 11 to 14.
All right.
So he Painkiller. He also did Painkiller Jane versus Darkness with Amanda Connor. Was a one shot, but yeah, yeah, he did a lot. He did it. Well, he just did TKO, did Sarah. He also did Battle Action, which is an anthology of various artists from 2022. Came out this year. Do, do,
All right.
do.
So as we send this thing down the final stretch, RDV, are there any comics to avoid this Wednesday?
Well, I mean, if you watch Wes's video, there's there's a panel from the Batman the Night, the issue 8, which is in question.
We're not listening to Wes. This is
Yeah, I know.
RDV's
For
statement.
me, I would say avoid Edge of Spider Verse, Catwoman. You could
Catwoman's
probably
not
stay
doing
away
it.
from Teenie Howard, man. When has she ever done it?
I don't know. I don't read it. I'm listening to RDV's recommendations.
If she is doing it, she's doing it by herself, and no one wants to know. Uh, uh, yeah, I'm just going through here. I'm looking myself. It's for me. It's much easier to find. There's a lot of good books out this week.
Which you are going to cover tomorrow on your Tuesday show. What's the name of that show?
Top 5 Tuesdays on the Geeky Puppet Show.
Top 5 Tuesdays on the Geeky Puppet Show, where you and who else?
My boy Zach
You and your
Richmond.
boy Zach.
Yes,
You guys are
I
going to talk
adopted him.
about your most anticipated books for the week coming
Yep,
up.
yep. We take 5 books from our pull list. We think are gonna be the best of the week out of our pull list, and then Thursday nights we come back and we for the best of the week, and we see if our picks actually held out.
I'm going to tell
Um,
you. I'm going to tell you one book right now to avoid.
excited
Avoid
about.
having one bad day with Tom King and Mitch Gerards. Avoid regretting spending $7.99 on a single comic book, because there's going to be 7 more bad days after this, and you don't want to get sucked into that 8 times 7, $56, 8 days of terrible badness. But maybe you do. Maybe I'm just wrong. But this is my recommendation. Um,
Jim
yeah.
Lee's doing a variant cover. Wow, that's kind of cool. Right there, up left. I mean, that's kind of
Yeah,
cool.
that's kind of cool. You were probably going to get some cool covers because uh,
They
DC
need someone
can't
else to sell it.
they cannot stop themselves from trying to make Tom King look good. So they're probably gonna look real pretty. But yeah, there you go. So that's that's one of my recommendations
I
to
know.
avoid.
I noticed you clicked on that, but you didn't click on Captain Marvel number 40.
Captain Marvel number 40. I didn't see it.
Those are right next to the one Batman One Bad Day.
It
Go up,
was?
upper right corner.
Oh, I see.
Because you're zoomed in too far. You must be zoomed in on your browser. That's why
Oh,
that your books show up differently.
it's got the cool binary outfit. Um,
She's back to being binary. Did you know?
no,
Yeah, of course you didn't. No one knows that.
I don't read Kelly Thompson. It's a cool. I love this out. I love this costume. Binary is such a cool looking character.
She
Um,
looks like Starfire without the. Well, she's got. Hey, in the cover she's got the female body. I give her that.
that's true. This is a nice cover. Um, I mean, yeah, it looks fine. Uh,
Look
if
at the guy on the bottom right corner. I mean, girl or guy. I don't know.
it's Pat.
Binary and non-binary.
Remember when SNL used to have that skit called Pat, and everyone
Yeah,
laughed, and it was no big deal. Nowadays, if they did Pat, they'd be canceled. People would be so triggered. Um, yeah, it's a fine looking cover. You know what? I'm going to give Kelly Thompson a round of applause right now for doing something I don't think anyone has done in
on pass.
the last 2 decades, and that is get
Or-
Captain Marvel up to issue 40. I don't think anyone has done that. So, bravo to you, Kelly Thompson. You deserve something for that.
All right.
Rhaegar says, I thought he said Batman one bad bidet.
You know, that'd probably be more interesting.
That would.
Return of the Batwing.
I'm just like picturing a comic strip right now where it's like Batman shouting from the room, and he's just like, Alfred, bring me the toilet paper. The bidet is not working. And then the next panel is like, Alfred. And then the next
Nah,
panel is like, and then he's just like, oh, I forgot.
he'd be if anything, he'd be more like Damien, you bastard. And it wouldn't be Bruce. It'd be one of the other Robins. Damien playing a prank on him. It'd be so. Trying to look what else is coming out this week. There's a lot of good books, but
I
I'll
go
I'll
back.
tell you the worst one. The worst one on here. Oh my gosh, the worst book on here. It's a Dark Crisis book, and if you find it on here, if you
Oh,
go
I'll
down,
find
you'll
it.
see it right.
The Young Justice.
Oh, that is gonna be the part of the worst of the week. This bitch hates everything that's about Teen Titans and decided to change it up for herself. Now I can't blame Laura Braga or Braga, whatever her name is. She does good art. But wow, I just can't. This is not Impulse. It's definitely not Superboy. Tim Drake is not himself either. They just this person just
What I've seen from Megan Fitzmartin is
ugh.
is awful. But she may not be the worst
I'd
because
rather read Tom King.
Tom King has a really good shot at
Just-
not being the worst. One Bad Day might not even be in the bottom two because we also have got Death to the Mutants.
well, isn't that a good thing? It's Kieran Gillen. Could be
No,
good.
from what I've seen coming out of this book from Kyron Gillen, this book has been getting more people putting screen caps of pages on Twitter with some of the most ridiculous god awful dialogue that is just, and characters talking about sending tweets to each other, like just nonsense that I'm just like, what the hell am I reading? You have an event that's Avengers and X-Men and Eternals and characters talking about tweeting things.
You sent a nasty tweet. Well, I was justified.
It's
Guys, break it up. It's just
this
Twitter.
book should be
Silence.
this book should be jammed packed full of X-Men, Avengers and Eternals, and it's just nonsense. It's just utter yeah. From what and what kills me is they do things like put awesome
Bonus
covers
digital.
like this, and just make it look like it's going to be the greatest thing ever, and then you open it up and it's just what the hell. So I think these two books are going to be battling it out for the crown. I
Really? You
think
don't think it's gonna? You don't think it's gonna be like I don't know. Harley Quinn could still pull it off. They could just
Thought you
have
liked
one
Harley
little
Quinn.
quote.
Thought you said Stephanie Phillips is doing okay.
Apart from that, actually one quote, the book wasn't that bad. It was predictable. It was average,
Oh,
but
come on. And
that
look at
one
this cover. You're
quote.
going to be getting this.
I mean, why would I not?
Like, see?
I'm not. I'm not sexist.
I'm not sexist.
But look at these Harley Quinn covers though. The throwback covers, the homage covers.
I do like this throw. Well, not really. Her face is
Well,
messed
not
up,
her.
but
No, yeah, of course it is.
if
But I
it,
love
if
it.
her,
The go-go checks.
the go-go checks are cool. Uh,
That's anime Harley Quinn.
yeah,
If she was a,
it's too
if she was
anime
manga.
looking. Uh, this is the one. This is the one that you got to get.
Honestly, whose cover is that? Who's doing that?
It's the Carla Cohen
Harley.
variant.
Does she realize that it's not? Wait. Look it closely. Kind of looks like Stephanie Phillips. The nose, smile, eyebrows. I'm just kidding.
Uh, anyways, uh, yeah, I'm not invested in Harley Quinn, so I leave it up to the experts.
Like I said, Tom King, that cover up there. Oh, not sorry, not Tom King. Tom Taylor. Look at the Nightwing cover. That looks.
Oh yeah, I hate this cover.
Who the hell would be buying that cover?
This is
It's great,
like,
and then you see him above that, so flamboyant.
yeah,
And
I just hate seeing these characters be drawn flamboyant. It yeah. This is like tee hee hee. Look how funny it is. Cause see, there's like a Nightwing crossing sign, and like he's right behind it, swinging just like the sign. Isn't that so funny?
it's like the deer crossing, and you're like, you
Right.
never see a deer when you go deer crossing, and then a deer pops out. It's like remind you, hey, remember, there's deers crossing here.
And look, it's even funnier because there's just like a Batman sticker on the sign, but someone tore part of it off because Nightwing doesn't like Batman. Just like, oh God, yeah, this is revolting. If I was a Nightwing fan, I would hate this. I mean, I hate it anyway, but if I were really invested as a Nightwing fan, but
Oh, it gets better.
it gets better because I mean they're just trying to turn Nightwing into a homoerotic character. I just
If you stare long enough, the water moves to the right. Optical illusion. You just look at the water. The water starts moving.
Oh, but do you need more? Do you
Oh,
need more homoeroticism? Here you go. Come on.
oh, look at he's teasing those birds. He's like, "Hey, birds, look at my ass."
Because look, it's funny because he's eating a bagel with smear on it.
I just don't like that kind of like the painting drawing, like that on the face and stuff. It just looks,
Yeah,
I don't
I'm
know,
not
it
a
looks,
fan
it's
either.
weird.
It, I do,
Oh, look, he's
however,
Spider Man.
like I semi like this cover. Semi. I like the composition of the cover,
I don't like the
but
costume.
the actual render of Nightwing himself isn't that good. But
Like if he's gonna be that dark, he looks like he's wearing like realistic like looking pants, and then like remember he's a cartoon character. I
yeah,
don't like that color.
the rendering of the
It
character is terrible.
the color should be darker. It should match the actual black of there. It should be like a leather one piece suit. Instead, it looks like somebody just animated it
Well, it should
with
have
3D
texture
paint.
as well. Like
Yeah,
everything else in the shot has texture, and then this is just this flat color. There's no shading, no texture. It just it's a terrible rendering. This is something that the editor should have shipped back and been like do over. But the concept of it is great. Like the framing of it, the composition, him being up here,
background's
the
great.
light.
Yeah, the scenery
Yeah.
scenery's great. Just edit him out of there. You're fine.
Oh well. Ah. Rhaegar says the Battle of Bloodhaven's Heart, more like the Battle of Bodonkadonk. In the next issue, Nightwing goes to the drag queen dance off as a contestant.
So the cover artist is actually the guy doing the interior art. The cover.
Bruno
That's the main.
Redondo.
Or no, that yeah. He does the main cover. That's a variant cover. So I'm not sure who that variant cover was.
The variant cover was Jamal Campbell,
Oh, Kimball.
who's a really good
Okay, down there.
artist. Um,
Yeah, it's a weird cover for him. David Teleski. Yeah.
but yeah, I hate
Let
that
me
cover
guess.
too.
Let me guess. Let me guess. The woman Nicola Scott did the swimsuit one.
You think?
I hope so. It's not one of the guys.
Ay ay ay. Well, I think that's probably gonna be
Oh,
yeah.
look, Black Adam. He cut his wrists. He's dying. Seaside in the tub.
I'm happy to see Silver Coin is still going strong. I know people like
I thought they
Skip
got
were a big
canceled a long
fan of.
time ago. That was last year, wasn't it? It just
Mm-mm.
came back.
That's on issue 13, still going.
How?
So
Here, hang on. Marania, I heard you. I read what you're saying. I just didn't acknowledge it at first because we were talking about something else. This is Kieran Gillen was the writer who made Tony Stark Adopted in the 50th anniversary title.
yeah, I am not impressed with Kyron Gillen. I when I got back into comics, one of the things I did was ask around, like, hey, who are the new writers and artists? Like, who's the good talent that's out there? And one of the names that got tossed around a lot was Kyron Gillen. Like, oh yeah, this Kyron Gillen guy. It's like, oh, okay, great. And then he started doing some indie books that got a lot of wave. Like he did that indie book Die. That started off super popular. Everyone's like, Die is like the greatest book, and then now no one talks about Die. He also does another book that I'm surprised you're not actually getting because it's your favorite artist, Dan Mora, partnered up with. And that's Once and Future. Um, and I was like, oh, gotta get because it's a Arthurian mythos story. And I've thought about going
Damn.
to try to pick it back up because I really like the art and I love Arthurian mythos. But I read like the first couple issues of that and I was like, ugh, I can't do this.
Dan more art, and also I like Jorge Jimenez, but like it's not always the best writing. But I do love their art though. I'll give them that though. They know how to draw the characters they're assigned to. Like these guys are like just spot on no matter what. Uh,
Let's
uh,
see. Oh, look, we're getting another Avengers 1 million BC. Big giant number one. Just make sure you get this. You're going to send your kids through college. Giant number
Jason Aaron.
one. Jason Aaron,
Look,
1 million BC Avengers. This is the dumbest thing
look,
that Jason Aaron ever came up with. I hate it.
look,
Jason,
look at that. Black Panther's a black caveman with a panther mask that he killed. He killed a panther.
yeah,
Oh,
it's so stupid. Apparently, Wakanda's been around for a billion years. Um, Ghost Rider has been around for a billion years.
well, I mean, you gotta have
Doctor
slaves.
Strange
You
has been
gotta
around for a billion years. Um,
you gotta have slaves back then.
oh, that's terrible. I'm gonna pretend I didn't hear that. Um, I think the big brute character is Starbrand because once again, Jason Aaron has no comprehension of what he's doing or working with.
Scotty
Um,
Young's doing a cover though. I
Phoenix
think.
has is it's so stupid. It's just uh, yeah. The big character, the big Hulk guy is Starbrand. His name is Vn VNN. Just just silly.
Uh,
Just
yeah.
oh yeah, it's not Doctor Strange. It's Agamotto, right? Because that's
So,
where the
remember,
Eye of
it's
Agamotto comes from. The first Sorcerer Supreme. Blah, blah. I just hate this
wait,
concept so
wait.
much
Did he
that
rip? Did he rip his eye out and put it into the amulet?
I don't even
His
know.
eye out. Look at the Scotty Young cover though. That's probably the best thing about these books. They're horrible. Is the Scotty Young
Yeah, I
covers.
do. I do like the Scotty Young covers.
Remember? That's how Thor was born.
How Thor was born. Jason Aaron, it's no wonder you think Thor Odinson is unworthy because you created this shit and you made him so. Um, I just I just can't even. I just God, I don't understand why people like Jason Aaron. I just and the sad thing is, if he had a decent editor, honestly, I think he could be a decent comic book writer. I think the guy can tell fun superhero stories.
If you
But
had an editor to tell him to
but
shut the fuck up and just write a good
but
story. It's
the
like,
problem is his ideas with the characters are retarded. If he just kept the characters what they're supposed to be and just decided like and had an editor that can rein in his storytelling, just don't let him fuck up the characters. He could do some stuff. But no, every time he's worse than Bendis. Every character he gets a hold of, he's like, I gotta just completely change this. And it ruins it. He's just completely destroyed Phoenix, one of my favorite characters in all Marvel Universe. Completely destroyed it because he has no concept of what it is. He
I've
completely
always
has
hated
no
the Phoenix.
concept of Starbrand. He turned Starbrand into some mindless Hulk character that just what are you doing?
Uh, I always hated the Phoenix. I prefer Jean Grey back before she became the Phoenix. I just yeah, I just yeah.
There's only two Phoenixes. There's Jean Grey and there's Rachel Summers. Jean Grey died. Rachel Summers comes from the future as her daughter.
I know.
That's it.
I'm just saying I hate the Phoenix. That's all. The
You
Phoenix
hate the
Force.
Phoenix. Why?
I just think it's a dumb concept. Anybody can have the mantle now. Go has the mantle
Well, they
of the
made
Phoenix.
that dumb. I agree. That's dumb when it
It's
but
like I just never got into it. I was like,
as originally as Claremont wrote it, only Jean Grey could have it. And the only
and
reason
then it
Rachel
goes the other
Summers
way.
has it is because Rachel
Yeah.
Summers is Jean Grey's daughter. And there's a whole
I'm like, okay.
story of how she gets it because she communicates with her mom in the past and the Phoenix Force like
She's all.
connects through it.
Isn't she
It
from an alternate universe? Though?
no. Well, who knows nowadays? But at the time she was just from the future, from the days of future past. But she comes to the present and she joins the X-Men because she's stuck in her past but our present. And then
I
there's a
think it
whole
got
issue.
retconned.
There's a whole issue where she has this psychic connection with her mom in the past, and that connection makes contact. The Phoenix Force becomes aware of her presence, and because she has the same bloodline, it attaches to her. And
I,
but now
yeah.
it's just anyone can have it. Like it's just like oh, it was a contest, and I'm like this is so stupid. Uh, Lame.
I don't know. Like you said, I think Rachel Summers was there was wasn't the, I don't think it was the Korvac saga. It was something like that. But it was Rachel Summers. They I think they retconned her saying that she's from an alternate future timeline where Jean and that had a future. I guess they were in like wasn't she like in basically the world where the Sentinels had taken over?
Yeah, the
Is
days
a
of future
possible
past.
future.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So because that never happened, I guess I guess it got altered to say that she was as an alternate universe, alternate future.
Yeah,
I
like
don't
I
know.
said, these days, who
Yeah,
knows? This was, this was back in like the late
I'm.
80s.
I guess that I'm just looking at the books that are coming out there, and the first book that I see is like firepower.
Yeah.
Yep.
Firepower.
Yeah,
Um,
and then for Undead Quinn, do a power bomb, which I think Skip might be reading that too. I'm not sure. I have a bad memory. I have it's 1:27 a.m. here. I'm turning into Joe Biden.
all right, well, let's get this going. We're out of here. Thank you
I'm, I hate
for
corp
joining
tops
me.
now.
Thank you for
You're
joining me.
welcome.
Um, talking about comics. You guys join RDV and Zach tomorrow night. What time is it again?
8 p.m. Eastern.
8 p.m. Eastern. And they're going to be talking about a little bit more positively about comics. And the only reason why I'm not doing that here, by the way, is just because that's what their show's doing. And there's no reason to do it twice. So
That's like you're the only show that talks about all the bad books.
I'm not trying to be super negative about books.
I know. I
I
know.
could be just highlighting just be redundant to focus on. So we're going to focus on those.
You're doing the opposite of what the black pill sites do, or at least what I want them to do. Talk about stuff that they like towards the end. But you're talking about stuff that you liked in the beginning, and then talking about stuff that you hate at the end.
Yeah. And I don't even
So
necessarily hate them. I'm just trying to suggest
No,
what
no,
probably
no.
aren't going to be the good ones. I could be wrong. It could be totally Tom King could come out and have one of the greatest comics of the year on Wednesday. I have no
W
real idea, but I'm putting the
Yeah.
odds are is no. That's all I'm saying.
8 PM
Um,
Eastern, 7 Central, 5 PM Pacific.
and finally, Skip recommends 20th Century Men. This looks pretty freaking cool. I might check this one out. Um,
Only number 1? Oh.
so
He's got shit kicker boots on.
yeah, shit kicker boots.
That's what it looks like.
That is
Yeah,
how we
it
do it. Thank you guys for being here. Every Monday, 9 p.m., we do late night comics, and join us for the fun. Come onto the Discord channel. You can see the link is in the comment or the description, sorry, down below. And recommend books for us to read. Join in on the discussion of books. And yeah, I guess we'll see you here next Wednesday, but tomorrow on the Geeky Puppet Show channel.
Yes.